What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 7 Chains. Chapter 151 Buggy's Miracle. Advertise here. Malinfando's temporary prison is a cold iron and stone building with thick walls that isolates it from all the hustle and bustle of the outside world. Fire Fist Ace, who was escorted from the 6th floor of Impel Down City, was imprisoned here, with his hands and feet locked by heavy iron chains. The air inside the prison is filled with humidity and coldness, which is in stark contrast to Ace's ability to burn the fruit. Ace sat on a stone chair in the corner, looking through the narrow window at the glimmer of light in the outside world. He knew that this might be the last time he saw the sky. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to suppress the fluctuations in his heart. The prison guards were alert to the criminal who was about to die, and their footsteps echoed in the empty corridors, coldly and with a strong rhythm. Ace seemed to be deaf to all this. His mind had drifted far away, back to the experience full of passion and dreams. He and his companions were sailing on the sea, chasing their dreams. At that time, they had nothing to fear, only the direction to move forward. Then, in order to meet Whitebeard, he even fought with the sea knight Jinbei for 5 days and 5 nights. Everyone. Ace's lips couldn't help but evoke a smile, which was a nostalgia for the good times in the past and a helpless farewell to the future. As the first ray of sunlight in the morning filtered through the gap in the high wall, 2 prison guards walked in and began to unlock Ace. The chains made a harsh sound on the ground, breaking the silence of the prison. Get ready. The prison guard put small sea stone handcuffs on Ace, and did not lock his feet. Instead, he placed a pair of black shoes in front of him. Hurry up, another guard urged. Immediately afterwards, Ace was escorted towards the high platform of the execution ground, and every step was as heavy as stepping on his heart. The surrounding guards were indifferent and wary towards Ace. The weapons in their hands shone coldly, as if they were ready to deal with any emergencies at any time. Ace turned a blind eye to this. His thoughts had been completely immersed in his own world, where his most precious memories and deepest emotions existed. Luffy and Sabo are 2 guys who always have silly smiles on their faces but firm belief hidden in their eyes. Every one of the Spade Pirates. Every one of the Whitebeard Pirates. Suddenly the sun shone completely on Ace. He was a little uncomfortable with being in prison for a long time and frowned. Fire Fist. Ace. Standing next to the execution platform, Warring States sighed inwardly as he looked at Ace. The moment Ace stepped onto the execution platform, the entire execution ground fell into an eerie silence. All eyes were focused on him, waiting for that moment to arrive. Ace took a deep breath, raised his head, faced the gathered crowd, and then looked up at the sky, as if telling his last silent wish to the boundless blue sky. Everyone, please don't come. At the same time, on the other side, due to its geographical location, Marinafando is close to the Red Earth continent, the Impel City is close to the Windless Zone, and the Gate of Justice is located at the dividing point of the ocean current. These 3 locations form a triangular opposition, so only from the Gate of Justice can one pass through the current to go to Impel Down or Marineland. The same goes for leaving, because it is not navigable against the current. On the sea, a marine warship slowly sailed towards the huge Gate of Justice. Luffy, will your father come? On the boat, the Demon King Ivankov raised his eyebrows. Probably not. After all, my father is a dragon, and Ace's father is Galdi. Roger. By the way, you have to keep it a secret. I must save Ace. Luffy stood on the bow of the boat with a firm gaze, while Jinbei was at the helm. At this time, Buggy and Mr. Point 3 climbed up. So confident. How are we going to cross the Gate of Justice and fly over with Fishman Karate? Or should we rely on this fish man to ask the whale shark to take us there? Buggy's tone was sarcastic, as if it would be useless even if they escaped. I only have this little ability, and there's nothing I can do about it. Jinbei Kaido said seriously. Then who should we rely on? If we can't get through the Gate of Justice, we can't get to Malinfando either. Buggy said calmly, but in his heart he was already secretly thinking about running away through the Gate of Justice. No, we will definitely catch up, Jinbei said so. Luffy shouted. Ah, he said he could catch up if he could catch up. Forget it, it's up to you, unless a miracle happens, otherwise, hee. After saying this, Buggy directly chose to lie down. Maybe there really is a miracle. Mr. Point 3 said, miracles cannot happen again and again. Instead of believing in this, it is better to believe that I have cut the door of justice with a few swords. Buggy was gesturing with his hands before he finished speaking. Suddenly, a strong sword energy passed directly over their heads, followed by another one after another. In a moment, the huge and indestructible Gate of Justice standing on the sea collapsed. Strange. Miracle. Master Buggy is the chosen one. He is also the only one. Lord Buggy, we will swear allegiance to you to the death. The pirates on the warship were really excited for a while. They were even closer to Buggy than to their own parents. Bang. Bang. The Gate of Justice collapsed, and the huge rocks set off waves, leaving Luffy and others' warship adrift. This sudden change shocked everyone, especially Buggy and his men. They were just waiting for the so-called miracle with the mentality of giving it a try, but they didn't expect that the miracle really happened. And all this is because of Buggy's words, believe in miracles. Master Buggy, you are so awesome. One of his subordinates shouted excitedly. Yes, Master Buggy is simply a godlike existence. Another subordinate agreed. Buggy was also a little confused at this time. He never thought that his casual words would actually bring about a miracle. However, he quickly came to his senses with a proud smile on his face. Haha, do you see? This is my uncle's strength. Buggy said loudly, who is the true god? It's only me, Uncle Buggy. Ha ha ha. Jinbei, rush, Luffy shouted excitedly. However, Jinbei's expression was extremely serious. His eyes were fixed on the fog raised by the huge waves in front of him, as if he had seen some disturbing sight. Not only Jinbei, Crocodile standing aside also showed a solemn expression, seeming to have a deep understanding of the coming danger. Jinbei, what's going on? Luffy looked at Jinbei in confusion and blinked his innocent eyes, obviously not realizing the seriousness of the situation. At this moment, a mysterious and familiar music sounded in the ears, and then a huge and extremely luxurious black pearl gradually appeared from the fog. Its outline is clearly visible, and the hull exudes an ancient and solemn atmosphere. Li Jing, I've said it all. Can't it be solved by just one shot from me? You see, all you've done is confusion. Thor's voice came. It's perfect, isn't it? Li Jing sheathed his sword. Not as good as me. Big Grey Wolf smacked his lips. Obviously it would be better to use my 10th power compression TMT arrangement to explode. Steve shook his head. Steve, yours is still a bit dangerous. Tren smiled, then turned to look at Xiaohei and asked, should there be enough time? No problem at all. We will arrive soon along with the accelerating current. Xiaohei looked at the control panel and smiled. Captain, there is a warship in front of us. At this time, Timo's voice shouted from the observation deck. Warship. Hearing Timo's cry, Tren looked puzzled and quickly led Li Jing, Thor, Steve and Big Wolf towards the bow of the ship. They stood on the bow of the ship, looking down. When Teren looked at it, his eyes happened to meet the eyes of a person below. That person was none other than Luffy, and he was staring at Tren with a puzzled look on his face, as if he was trying to remember something. Seeing this scene, the corner of Tren's mouth raised slightly, revealing a faint smile. Hey. Isn't this Luffy? Luffy's eyes became sharp after hearing Tren's voice. He squinted his eyes and looked at Teren carefully, constantly thinking about this familiar yet unfamiliar figure in his mind. After a while, Luffy finally remembered who the person in front of him was. He opened his mouth wide and shouted excitedly. Oh, it's you, Coffin Man. The smile on Tren's face instantly froze after hearing this, while Li Jing and others on the side couldn't help laughing. Chapter 152 The War on Top begins. Advertise here. You're still as good as ever. Luffy, Tren said with a smile. It's normal. But why are you here? Are you here to play? Luffy continued. Wait, Luffy. Buggy pulled Luffy over instantly, and the Monster King also echoed. Do you know who he is? His reputation was known to us even in prison, Ivankov continued. Ah, is Coffin Man very powerful? Luffy asked in a typical straightforward manner. More than just awesome, this guy, Ivankov said and glanced at Tren secretly, seeming to be a little apprehensive. It's on the same level as the four emperors, Ivankov said to Luffy in a low voice. Then how about I ask him to help me save Ace? Luffy thought simply. At this moment, Teren had already set his sights on Crocodile. Sand Crocodile, I didn't expect to meet here. Jenny Tren. Crocodile frowned and didn't say much. He didn't want to be killed at sea just after he got out of prison, so being quiet was the best choice. Okay, since the Coffin Man is so strong, then I must ask him to save. Luffy just made up his mind, but the slightly undulating sea suddenly reversed. It's a tsunami. At this time, the pirate at the tail of the warship shouted, and the others also turned their heads and looked back, and then the small warship was instantly submerged. Tsunami. It seems that Whitebeard has arrived. Teren looked at this scene with an excited expression. Then let's go to Malinbando through this tsunami. The moment Tren finished speaking, a tsunami hit him, and then the Black Pearl suddenly deployed a complete protective shield, and the two-way stabilization course system started, the automatic course correction started, and the semi-levitation capability started. In short, Big Wolf invented it, Steve built it, and Xiaohei set it up. With this set of safety systems in place, the tsunami passed and the ship stayed. Our Black Pearl is really very safe. Ha ha ha. Tren looked at the warship that was already flying into the sky and smiled helplessly. Time goes back a little bit, and Tren and Luffy have not yet met at the Gate of Justice. Malinfando, the execution platform. Blackbeard guy. Looking at the 5 people at Shichibukai's position, Sengoku frowned, but didn't think much about it, and turned around and walked forward. Garp, I'm going to tell you all. It's up to you, I'll go downstairs. Garp waved his hand, pretending not to care, and walked to the lower left side of the execution platform to stand next to Crane. Oh, Sengoku looked at Garp and sighed, then turned around, took the phone bug broadcast from a soldier, put it in the palm of his hand, and walked to Ace's left side. Looking at the Marine Fleet Admiral, Ace felt the sea breeze blowing on his face, but still said nothing. Before the execution, I have something to tell you. Sengoku said to the phone bug. Portkas. D. Ace, it is of great significance that this man is about to be executed. It's not you who is wrong, Garp. Then the path he chose is just like his father. He said calmly, looking at Garp's clenched fists. Women are really gentle at this time. Shall he? Garp looked at he with a smile, but he couldn't hide the sadness in his eyes. Ace, tell everyone your father's name. Warring States said as he looked at Ace on the execution platform. Ha! Ace raised his eyes slightly, stared at Warring States, and said firmly, my father is by who? Wrong. That's right, Whitebeard is my father, and my father is Edward Newgate. You can't hide it. Warring States said calmly, at that time, based on the intelligence provided by the CP organization, we desperately searched for. I screened one pregnant woman after another in the same month, but I couldn't find that man's bloodline. Ace. You have to thank your mother, Portcas D. Rouge, for being a great mother. He not only deceived our eyes. No, it was a mother's determination that made her deceive the eyes of the world. Your mother was pregnant for 20 months before giving birth to you, and the price was death. 1 year and 3 months after your father's death, you, Portcas D. Ace, who inherited the world's most evil bloodline, were born. And your father is. Having said this, Warring States took a deep breath. One Piece. Gall D. Roger. When the Warring States period announced the news, everyone, whether it was the Sabayati Islands or Marineland, was shocked into silence. People's eyes widened and their mouths opened wide, unable to believe what they were hearing. They couldn't help but ponder. What does this mean? Could the reason why Portcas D. Ace be so powerful be inherited from his father? Will he know the legendary secret treasure? Countless people began to speculate and discuss, and everyone had different answers and expectations. However, no one is thinking about the future, because Ace has been taken to the execution platform like his father. Lu la la la. Warring States period. At this moment, a burst of hearty laughter came from Malinfando. The laughter seemed to penetrate the whole world, making people shocked. At the same time, the Marines standing on the observation deck were horrified to find that at least 45 menacing pirate ships with different flags appeared out of thin air on the sea ahead. These ships were lined up in a row, like an insurmountable line. The Great Steel Wall. It's the pirate fleet. It's the pirate group under the Whitebeard pirates. A Marine shouted in panic. The other Marines changed their colors after hearing this, and they immediately sounded the warning siren, and the sharp and piercing sound echoed throughout Marinaventer. After Warring States heard this burst of laughter, his face became very ugly. He thought to himself, Whitebeard's voice. Impossible, he clearly. Just as he was thinking, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Warring States suddenly turned his head to look inside the harbor, with an unbelievable look in his eyes. Masaka. Bang. A loud noise suddenly came from the harbor, followed by a large splash of water. I saw 3 huge Moby Dick slowly emerging from the water, each one as huge as a hill. On the ship, Whitebeard's 14 capable officers stood neatly, and their appearance plunged the entire scene into deathly silence. Bump, bump, bump. At the same time, the man also knocked on Kong Yunchi and slowly boarded the bow. Warring States. Newgate. What you said is not right at all, because. Ace. He. After saying this, Whitebeard boarded the bow. Dad. Ace looked at everyone and the man, and couldn't help but shed tears in his eyes. I saw Whitebeard, standing Kong Yunchi aside, clenching his hands slightly and crossing them on his chest. A powerful energy began to gather on his fists, forming 2 dazzling white halos. Immediately afterwards, he hit both sides with force, and the air instantly became solemn. Bang! There was a loud noise, and the entire space was like broken glass, spreading rapidly with Whitebeard as the center. The earth was trembling, as if it would crack at any time. The air was also trembling, as if it could not bear the force, and the sea was shaking violently, setting off turbulent waves. Because Ace is my Whitebeard's son. Whitebeard's roar echoed between heaven and earth and lingered for a long time. Chapter 153 On top of the war 1. Advertise here. Dad. Ace's face was filled with tears, and he roared at the top of his lungs, his voice echoing throughout the battlefield. He struggled to break free, but his body couldn't move at all. On the other side, Whitebeard stood on the bow of the boat, looking up to the sky and laughing. I'll take you home right now, Ace. Along with his laughter, the powerful conqueror's haki burst out from his body, and the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart. Whitebeard stretched out his right hand, clenched it into a fist, and then swung it out violently. In an instant, the clouds in the sky rolled up and the waves surged, forming a huge tsunami tens of meters high. Is this the strongest man in the world? We are all going to die. Seeing such a horrific scene, the Marines in Malinfando were horrified. Their eyes widened and despair appeared on their faces. What a terrifying ability. Whitebeard. Aokiji murmured to himself at the general's table. Looking at this huge wave, I knew I had to take action to prevent this disaster. So, Aokiji instantly jumped up into the sky, waved his hands, and a cold breath quickly filled the air. Ice Age. Aokiji whispered. His hands released 2 rays of blue light, extending straight towards the huge tsunami. In the blink of an eye, the originally turbulent waves instantly condensed into ice cubes, and the entire sea surface was frozen into an ice sheet. However, Aokiji didn't stop there. Taking this opportunity, He used his ability again, and sharp icicles flew out of his hands, shooting straight at Whitebeard like missiles. Ice Thorn Spear, Aokiji shouted. These ice picks, carrying the sharp cold air, drew an arc in the air at extremely fast speeds, arriving in front of Whitebeard in the blink of an eye. Faced with Aokiji's attack, Whitebeard showed no fear. He looked at Aokiji with a sneer, his eyes shining with determination. He clenched his right fist and swung it hard, and a powerful shock wave suddenly erupted. Aokiji kid, you are not qualified. Whitebeard roared. His fist collided with Aokiji's ice pick, making a dull noise. Ice cubes were flying everywhere, and broken ice cubes were scattered on the sea. But Whitebeard's power did not weaken, and his fist continued to advance forward, directly hitting Aokiji. Aokiji's expression changed, and he was suddenly shocked by such a powerful force that he had to transform into elements to save his life. Then he fell into the sea of the inner harbor, groaned, and spurted out a mouthful of blood. This power is disgusting. After falling to the ground, Aokiji continued to freeze the sea surface, also thinking that all the ships of the White Who pirates were frozen in place. As the world the most powerful, it's a pity that this is an execution of justice. Fujitora was the second to move. He drew his knife and activated his fruit ability at the same time. A gravity circle shot straight into the sky for a moment, and in the sky a huge meteorite fell straight from Whitebeard's 3 Moby Dicks. He is indeed a guy who can be a general. Whitebeard looked at this scene and squinted his eyes. But, Whitebeard pointed his left hand at the meteorite, then slowly tightened it, and at the same time, a trace like a thunder crack appeared. Hey, what can we do? Seeing this, Kizaru also took the opportunity to take action and used the 8-foot mirror to come in front of him. 8-foot beautiful Magatama, whoops. A blue flame rushed over and ate all Kizaru's attacks. Then Marco's left foot was armed and struck straight down. Boom, bang, Kizaru smashed into the ground. How is it possible for you to besiege our king as soon as he comes? Marco, who entered the phoenix form, looked at Kizaru who smashed into the ground and said. Bang. At this time, the meteorite in the sky was completely shattered by Whitebeard. Whitebeard held the naginata in both hands and swung it at the meteorite that had begun to split. The meteorite that was attracted by gravity instantly turned into countless fragments and smashed towards the marine headquarters. How is it possible, with this kind of power? Fujitora's expression changed, and he immediately activated his fruit ability to control these meteorites, but Whitebeard's power was too powerful, and the meteorite fragments fell like raindrops, causing marine and uncomfortable small casualties. Whitebeard. At this moment, Akainu also took action. Hot lava came out of his body, like a volcano erupting, and he rushed towards Whitebeard. Seeing this, Whitebeard raised the corners of his mouth slightly, showing a disdainful smile, and swung out the naginata in his hand, sending a huge shock wave flying towards Akainu. The two people's forces collided, triggering a violent explosion. The surrounding buildings collapsed one after another and dust flew into the air. Whitebeard did not stay at the bow of the ship anymore. He was seen holding Conqueror's Haki with both hands, and at the same time, Conqueror's Haki was wrapped around it. With the ability of Shock Fruit, he jumped up high and struck the ground with all his strength. Shocking wave. Quote. Cracks on the ground appeared in Marine Fando Square at the same time with sword energy, and spread straight towards the execution platform. It's really scary. Doflamingo looked at this scene with a slight cold sweat on his forehead. Then he noticed that Hawkeye had drawn the black blade Yi, and he couldn't help being surprised. Hey, you don't want to. I also want to try the slashing attack from the strongest man in the world. After saying this, Hawkeye instantly reached before the slashing attack spread. He raised his black sword high and struck down with all his strength. Although he felt a little uncomfortable, he still easily received Whitebeard's slash and offset it. At the same time, Hawkeye rushed straight towards Whitebeard. I can't let you disturb Daddy. Beast's eyes were firm and he raised his swords to block Hawkeye's attack. Foil sword. Looking at the person in front of him who blocked his attack, Eagle Eye couldn't help but frown. He originally thought he would be a powerful opponent, but he didn't expect it to be a little-known foil swordsman Beasta. However, since the opponent has already taken action, it can only be a battle. Forget it, I'll just let you play with me for a while. Hawkeye said calmly, as if he didn't take Beasta seriously. However, Beasta smiled slightly, with a trace of determination flashing in his eyes. He knew how powerful Hawkeye was, but that didn't mean he would back down. So confident. A faint smile appeared on Beasta's face, but he did not dare to slack off at all. Since Hawkeye was broken by Li Jing 3 years ago, he has never stopped training in swordsmanship. Just to let that man draw the sword for him, so now Hawkeye will only be stronger. At this moment, General Green Bull thrust his hands into the ground, and countless roots burst out of the ground, like a group of ferocious beasts, slaughtering the surrounding pirates crazily. These roots were extremely sharp and easily penetrated the pirates' bodies, staining the entire battlefield red with blood. There is a flaw. Suddenly, a giant lieutenant general discovered Whitebeard's flaw. The giant axe in his hand was filled with armed domineering energy and struck straight at Whitebeard. However, Whitebeard didn't even look at him. He raised his left hand slightly, and a powerful air shock energy quickly gathered into a spherical shield, easily blocking the attack of the giant axe. Immediately afterwards, Whitebeard waved Kong Yunchi with his right hand and slashed away at an astonishing speed. Ah! The giant lieutenant general let out a scream, his waist instantly deformed, and his body flew to the left involuntarily. His eyes widened with horror on his face, completely unable to believe what was happening in front of him. Chapter 154 On top of the war 2. Advertise here. Ace. At this time, the huge little Oz made a direct attack. With the cooperation of Doflamingo, Shang, and Moonlight Moria, his huge figure lay in front of the execution platform, like a huge and powerful piece of meat. Bridge. And the pirates of the Whitebeard pirates also swarmed up. Oz. Seeing another friend fall, before Ace could feel sad, a familiar voice came from the sky. Ace. Luffy shouted, with Kirkdar and Buggy on his left and right, and behind him were the Shemale King and Jinbei. At this point, the Impel City Prison Break team has officially landed on the battlefield. In the center of the battlefield, Whitebeard stood up to the attacks of Fujitora and Aokiji. Ah! As Whitebeard roared, the clouds in the sky seemed to be split into two halves. Hockey ball. Aokiji's eyes were calm and firm. Gravity knife. Fujitora waved the sword in his hand and slashed down, his eyes revealing his persistence in justice. The two stood side by side, preparing to face the pirate who once shocked the world. Whitebeard's face was dull, and he first used vibration to break Aokiji's ice, and then held Kong Yun tightly in his hand, resisting Fujitora's gravity and said. Bang! The strong gravity caused the ground under Whitebeard's feet to break, and a trace of blood oozed from the corner of Whitebeard's mouth. He is old, this is something that Whitebeard cannot deny. He knows that this may be the last battle in his life, but even so, he will never back down. You're old, Whitebeard, Aokiji said slightly, looking at Whitebeard who was pressed down by Fujitora's gravity knife. Two brats, this is much weaker than when I fought with Roger. Whitebeard smiled, then suddenly gave up resistance and grabbed Fujitora's head with one hand. No. Before Fujitora could react, a shock wave hit his head directly. Boom! Bang! Whitebeard threw Fujitora out directly. Smile. Aokiji's arm turned into an ice spear, piercing Whitebeard. The ground froze instantly at the same time, and sharp ice spikes struck Whitebeard with the cold breath. But Whitebeard just waved the Kumokiri in his hand, shattering the ice spike, and at the same time, a powerful vibration force burst out from the blade and rushed straight towards Aokiji. This is a place of justice and cannot be destroyed by pirates. Fujitora, who got up, did not miss this opportunity. He raised his staff and sword high, and the ground began to tremble. Huge rocks rose from the ground like cannonballs and hit Whitebeard. Whitebeard rotated his body, and the sword light swept around like a tornado, chopping all the flying rocks into pieces. The battle intensified. Although Whitebeard was brave, he began to feel difficult when faced with the joint attack of the two generals. Dad. At this time, Diamond Josie rushed out and knocked Aokiji away. Leave this to me, Josie yelled, eyes fixed on Aokiji, while the other three captains turned on Fujitora. It's troublesome. Whitebeard gasped, clutching his chest. There was nothing he could do, the old injuries had begun to recur. Even though things have changed a lot, Marine has 5 generals, and Whitebeard has not been attacked by dutiful sons, but Marine does not talk about martial ethics. But fortunately, at least now the Whitebeard pirates almost entered the infield by himself. We can't let him go straight to the execution platform. Looking at Whitebeard's performance, Warring States gritted his teeth. He didn't expect Whitebeard at this age to be so strong. As the Warring States order was issued, the entire harbor square seemed to have turned into a huge cage, with countless steel walls rising from all directions, trapping all the pirates inside. At the same time, the previously hidden pacifists also appeared one after another, holding various weapons in their hands and began to attack the pirates. Originally, Whitebeard's side had gained a certain advantage, but now the situation was reversed instantly, and Marine's side had the upper hand. The Whitebeard pirates and Luffy's escape team are both trapped in a difficult situation. Forbidden hatred. The green bull became extremely large. He waved his roots and continuously killed the pirates around him. Meteor volcano. Akainu stood in the distance, continuously releasing hot magma balls into the circular circle. These magma balls were flying in the air like burning meteors, posing a huge threat to the pirates. Sakazuki. Whitebeard's eyes widened and he looked at Akainu angrily. He picked up the Bushunkiri in his hand and prepared to attack Akainu. Bang. However, at this moment, Akainu suddenly gave up the attack. He suddenly raised his foot and stepped heavily on the white-bearded bush. Whitebeard, none of you can leave here. Akainu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He stared at Whitebeard tightly, as if he wanted to eat him alive. On the other side, Luffy had no time to spare. He stared at Ace on the execution platform and ran towards him crazily. General Marine was almost separated by the Whitebeard pirates. Boom. Bang. Of course there is also a fisherman. Tisk, 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 I can't let you pass. Kizaru looked at Luffy and smiled lewdly. I'll do it. Crocodile was about to step forward, but suddenly a line cut off his head. Ha no ga be you. Hey, Crocodile, who had recovered, looked at Doflamingo. It was just a chance to make eye contact, and the two started fighting instantly. However, it is unrealistic to rely on a pirate group to defeat the powerful Marine. As time passed, Marine reinforcements continued to increase, while the number of pirates gradually decreased. Marco tried to rush to the execution platform, but was punched back to the ground by Garp, and was locked with sea stone handcuffs by the ghost spider, instantly losing his fighting ability. The other captains also suffered heavy casualties under the Green Bull's attack, and even Diamond Josie was frozen into ice by Aokiji. Gradually, Whitebeard has to face more and more enemies, and powerful combat forces such as Akainu, Aokiji, Fujitora and Green Bull are attacking him one after another. Ahem. Whitebeard couldn't help coughing out a mouthful of blood, tightly holding Kong Yunchi in his hand, trying to stabilize his body. Is this the so-called strongest man in the world? It seems to be nothing more than that. Green Bull laughed, and then turned into a tree with his left hand and attacked Whitebeard. Then what do you think it should be? At this moment, Whitebeard suddenly raised his head and looked sharply at the attacking Green Bull. A powerful aura emerged from him, as if to tear the surrounding air apart. The world's strongest man's conqueror's dominance explodes instantly. The Green Bull was frightened by Whitebeard's conqueror's domineering power, and his body trembled involuntarily, and the original attack on Whitebeard also stopped. However, just this moment of pause gave Whitebeard the opportunity to fight back. Whitebeard waved his fist without hesitation and struck the Green Bull with all his strength. This punch carried unparalleled power, and immediately after, he punched several more times in succession. The Green Bull was beaten back by Whitebeard's punches, vomiting blood from its mouth. It wasn't until it flew into the ruins that Whitebeard took the opportunity to turn around and confront several other marine generals head-on. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes, as if he was ready for the final decisive battle. Because he noticed that Luffy was about to board the execution platform. Chapter 155 The War on Top has just begun. Advertise here. On the execution platform, Warring States frowned as he looked at the figure standing straight up. Poor Salino, you guy, you have to understand the situation clearly. Kizaru. No, Garp was knocked off by Luffy's fist, and you didn't tell me. If you point me, do you want to touch your conscience? Never mind, just execute him. Warring States shouted. Yes, the two executioners waved their long knives directly. The moment the knife was about to fall on Ace's neck. Ace. Luffy suddenly burst out with conquerors. At the same time, he knocked out a group of marines and two executioners. This guy. Whitebeard looked at this scene, especially Garp who was knocked away, and seemed to realize something, so he directly issued an order for others to cover Luffy with all their strength. Just continue to hold back these marine generals. Garp, forget it, I'll do it myself. Seeing Luffy approaching the execution platform with the help of the Revolutionary Army's lightning, Sengoku instantly transformed into the form of a giant Buddha. Shock wave. Sengoku just wanted to use all his strength to kill Ace and Luffy together. As a result, he caught Garp's eyes, and the shockwave of Buddha Sengoku was blocked by Luffy's big rubber balloon form. Opportunity. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Luffy took out the key given by Hancock, but Kizaru broke it with a laser. Luffy. At this time, the MVP of the game, Mr. 3, used his ability to directly imitate a handful, and threw it out the moment he fell off the execution platform. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the smoke on the execution platform, full of anticipation and tension. Suddenly, a roar sounded. Fire fist. Then, a blazing flame suddenly broke through the fog and illuminated the entire battlefield. Ace pulled Luffy off the execution platform with a smile on his face. At the same time, all the pirates cheered with excitement. However, at this moment, Akainu and Aokiji tried to stop them, but they were punched away by Whitebeard, and they turned into elemental states. Can't let them go. Akainu roared angrily. Everyone, all retreat. Whitebeard shouted loudly, his voice resounding throughout the battlefield. He used his abilities without hesitation to split the battlefield directly, forming an insurmountable barrier. Dad, Ace, Marco and the others shouted anxiously, their eyes filled with reluctance. Let's go. Whitebeard shouted again, his tone extremely firm. At this moment, he stood in front of everyone like an impenetrable wall. Facing them were Buddha no Sengoku, Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru, Fujitora and the seriously injured Green Bull. But Whitebeard had no fear, holding Kong Yunchi tightly in his hand, his eyes firm. At this time, he is a real father, willing to protect his children with his life. The world government and marine did not give him a home. He started a family by himself as a pirate. He has already experienced what love is. I am a remnant of the old era, and there is no ship that can carry me in the new era. Just when everyone was shocked by this domineering attitude, Akainu sneered calmly and said, "You are just a loser, using so-called family affection to numb yourself, as if you were about to be killed by me." Quote. Upon hearing this, Ace, who was running away, suddenly paused, but he did not look back. However, Akainu's words continued. Oh, no, your so-called family love is now abandoned and you lie here alone. In the end, you still have no family. Whitebeard. Asshole. Ace stopped suddenly, turned around, angrily threw a fire fist at Akainu, and roared. This era is called Whitebeard. Haha. Looking at Ace, Akainu smiled slightly, and then started fighting with him. As for Whitebeard, he was stopped by others. Ace. Seeing Ace turn back and being knocked to the ground by Akainu, Luffy also turned back and ran, but because of too many stimulating hormones injected before, his whole body reached its limit. Looking at these two brothers, one is the son of Revolutionary Army Dragon and the other is the son of One Piece Roger, Akainu didn't even think about it and directly blasted Luffy with Dark Hound. Just when Luffy was stunned, Ace stood in front of him, and at the same time a faster figure appeared. Bang! Griffin. Looking at the sword that blocked his attack, Akainu gritted his teeth, red-haired Shanks. It's the red-haired pirates. No, what is that? Suddenly, a huge figure poked out from behind Malinfando. Oh, have you been discovered? Huge battleship, San Juan Wolf. And who is on the execution platform? Oh, we were finally discovered. But didn't we show up a little too early? Dad, are you not dead yet? Blackbeard Teach smiled. How is it possible? The evil king, the drunkard, the Getsuga hunter, and the former guard Chengame no Shiryu. Aren't those extremely evil criminals from the 6th floor of Impel Down City? How could they appear here? Blackbeard Teach. Also, why are they here? Warring States looked at these figures and clenched his fists. Thief ha 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 ha. Blackbeard laughed, then looked at Shanks and frowned. Shanks couldn't come so early in his plan. You bastard. Whitebeard looked at Teach with clear murderous intent in his eyes. Suddenly, on the battlefield, the red-haired pirates, the Blackbeard pirates, the Whitebeard pirates, and the Marines were all in full strength. Shanks, what do you want to do? Warring States looked at Shanks immediately. After all, Blackbeard was not important yet. And Blackbeard's group also stood still and stayed on the execution platform, because Whitebeard hadn't really run out of fuel yet. Shanks took back the griffin that blocked Akainu, raised his eyes and looked around at all the forces present, and spoke confidently. If we continue fighting like this, there will only be casualties, so please give me some face and stop the war. Stop it. Marine is going to die. And it's live broadcast now. Ace has not been executed, Whitebeard is still gone, can Marine still hang out? Sengoku's inner reaction was extremely rich. Impossible. Sengoku shouted, there's no way Marine will let anyone go. In that case, the red-haired took out Griffin and released Conquerors. Behind him, the leaders of the red-haired pirate group appeared one after another. If there are still guys who haven't had enough trouble, come on. Let's accompany you. The whole place was quiet for a moment. Really, Shanks. Suddenly a low laughter came, the voice was low and playful. With the appearance of this voice, the originally quiet battlefield instantly became tense. Immediately afterwards, a special BGM sounded, like a passionate symphony, breaking the calm. The Black Pearl broke through the ice all the way, and the hull was covered with a thick layer of ice, as if it were a mysterious ship sailing out of the ice and snow. The Black Pearl finally stopped steadily on the battlefield, its sails rustling, as if announcing its arrival to everyone. It's the Tren Adventure Group. Someone exclaimed, his voice full of fear and awe. Jenny Tren. Shanks looked at the leader of the figure with a solemn look on his face. Roar. Suddenly, Tuanzi roared loudly, and the sound was as deafening as thunder. Its body quickly grew in size, entering the form of a mountain god, and the surrounding ice cubes shattered. Sadako sat on Danzi's back with cold eyes. Tuanzi roared again, blowing away all the water mist caused by breaking the ice. I still don't like to give you face as always. Shanks. Tren was wearing a coat with a black lining, which made him look particularly eye-catching. His left hand was placed on the hilt of the gambling sword, exuding a frightening aura. On Tren's left side, Thor was wearing a maid's outfit, holding a plate in his hand, and frowning slightly. Then came the evil-looking gray wolf, with dark green dark energy flowing in his hands, and excitement shining in his eyes. Behind him is Steve, who has taken out his wooden sword and put on his leather armor, looking calm and resolute. Li Jing, on the right, was holding his sword with a calm expression, as if he didn't care about the situation in front of him, but his eyes revealed an indescribable confidence. Next are the 3 generals of Bikini Castle, and those 3 chairs are indispensable for them to appear. Finally, there is the white bear holding an axe in his hand, with a hint of ferocity and determination in his eyes. At the same time, countless ninja figures from the Shadow Legion suddenly appeared on the Black Pearl. These ninjas moved quickly and quickly occupied various key positions. Then, I saw a place on the deck suddenly sinking, and then slowly rising 5 Gatling machine guns. The platelets stood obediently at the designated place, quietly waiting for orders. These 5 Gatlings shone with a cold metallic sheen, and their black muzzles made people shudder. At this point, all members of the Tren Adventure Group have appeared. Besides, the corners of Tren's mouth raised slightly, revealing a smile. He gently held the handle of the knife and pulled out half of the gambling blade, and an unparalleled powerful momentum burst out instantly. The real war at the top has just begun. His voice was not loud, but it sounded like thunder in other people's ears, shocking everyone. Chapter 156 The 11th Partner. Advertise here. This kid, Whitebeard gasped, looking deeply at Tren and his group, his eyes slightly lowered, making it impossible to guess what he was thinking at the moment. Warring State's face was terrifyingly gloomy, and he gritted his teeth and said, Jenny Tren. You guys, do you also want to get involved in this battle? Thinking of the tragic scene of the Battle of Red Harbor, Warring State's heart was filled with excitement. After a while, I was afraid. The current situation is extremely unfavorable to Marine. They simply cannot withstand the joint attacks of multiple powerful forces such as the Whitebeard Pirates, the Blackbeard Pirates, and the Red-Haired Pirates. Not to mention the Tron adventure group. Jenny Tren. Shanks roared, and Conqueror's domineering force was instantly released, sweeping across the entire battlefield. Even the Whitebeard pirates and Marine headquarters who were fighting in the distance were affected. This war is meaningless. Do you really want to fight? Shanks said, staring at Tren. Haha. Looking at everyone's expressions as if they were facing a formidable enemy, Tren couldn't help laughing. No, Shanks. I don't know your tone. I thought you could beat us. Crack. In an instant, all members of the red-haired pirate group entered combat mode. As soon as Jesus raised his spear and didn't have time to pull the bolt, an infrared aiming point appeared on his forehead. You don't think you can be faster than me, do you? Timo appeared directly from the sail pole of the Black Pearl, his thumb slightly pressed down on the sniper rifle trigger, and a playful smile hung on the corner of his mouth. When, seeing that he was locked, Jesus broke out in a cold sweat. He was known as a sniper with perfect shots, but now he didn't even know when the other party appeared. This made him extremely shocked. No. You have to strike first. Beckman, as the second in command of the red-haired pirates, had just shown his murderous intention towards Tren, but Thor's dragon eyes shrank, shocking him. No. This woman. Looking at Thor in a maid uniform, Beckman did not dare to move at all, as if he was being targeted by an indescribable horror. Don't move. Shanks spoke directly. At this moment, he already understood that his pirate group was no match for Tren's group. Warring States. Shanks. Hearing Shanks call him, Warring States frowned. We cooperate. As soon as Shanks said this, everyone was stunned. Shang. Seng Guo was about to say something, but Shanks shouted, haven't you seen it yet? This guy, he is just waiting, this is the moment. Although they are all annoying, compared to Whitebeard, the Tren adventure group is a little more troublesome. Akainu's hands turned to lava, and his whole body was filled with scalding heat. His eyes were fixed on Tren's group, as if he wanted to eat them alive. He knew clearly in his heart that although Whitebeard was powerful, it belonged to the past era, while the Tren adventure group represented a new threat and must be eradicated immediately. Warring States also agreed to this plan in his heart. A Whitebeard who had barely lived in the old era, a Rocks-like gang in the new era, the answer is obvious. Marine. After thinking for a moment, Sengoku gritted his teeth and issued the order, total annihilation of Tren's group. As the order was issued, the 5 generals turned their attention to Tren's group at the same time. And Garp looked at Ace and Luffy who were staying together with Jinbei, the Shemale King and Hancock, and he breathed a sigh of relief, and then showed a serious look on his face. Hey, it's getting more and more exciting. We'll see you next time. Doflamingo, who was fighting against Kirkdar, jumped back in front of Sengoku and the others. After all, he couldn't lose his position as Shichibukai. Sword Demon, Li Jing. Mihawk held the black sword in one hand, and his eagle-like pupils locked directly on Li Jing. The more corpses, the better. Moonlight Moria and Shang also targeted Tren and his group. On the execution platform, Fan Oka looked at the chaotic battlefield below expressionlessly, turned to look at the black beard beside him, and asked in a calm tone, Captain, what should we do now? Hearing this, Blackbeard also withdrew his gaze from the battlefield, glanced at his companions, a hint of cunning flashed in his eyes, and then said in a deep voice, Don't worry, let's take a look at the situation first. After that, he jumped down. There was a burst of arrogant laughter on the execution platform. So stand on the side with more people first. Thief, ha 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 ha. Warring States stared at Blackbeard angrily, gritted his teeth and shouted, Teach. Don't look at me like that, Sengoku. Blackbeard didn't take it seriously, and responded with a proud smile on his face. Don't forget, I am 7 warlords of the sea. Warring States snorted coldly, his eyes full of disgust and contempt. Humph, you idiot, I will settle this account with you after this matter is over. At this moment, the situation on the field changed dramatically. The originally opposing forces suddenly changed their positions and stood on the same front. Marine, the pacifists, the Shichibukai, the red-haired pirates, and the Blackbeard pirates all came together to form a powerful force. This sudden change caused the entire battlefield to fall into a brief silence. Everyone realized that this battle was no longer simple and black and white, but had become more complex and unpredictable. The Whitebeard pirates were seriously injured and were still in neutral. Whitebeard was pulled aside by Marco and was simply healed. Jenny Tren, stay here forever. Shanks stared at Tren. His tone was serious, without any other emotion on his expression, because he knew how dangerous this guy in front of him was. Haha, there are so many people. Then. You don't mind if I have 2 more people, right? It just so happens that I can also experience the feeling of free prostitution. Tren smiled slightly, and then used the double red stick prop. Conforms to scene requirements, props can be used directly regardless of conditions. 2 more people. Tren's words made everyone except Hawkeye look at each other instantly, yes. They did not consider that Tren would have 2 more partners, but immediately doubted the people around them. The alliance is so fragile. Hey, what is this in the sky? Just when Shanks and others were doubtful because of Terran's words, a Marine who was lying on the ground receiving treatment pointed to the sky tremblingly. In the sky, another Marine raised his eyes slightly and saw an extremely huge meteorite falling straight down. Smile. Kizaru and Akainu looked at Fujitora. It wasn't released from below. Fujitora quickly explained, while staring up at him with a confused look on his face, no. In other words, among the people present at this time, almost all of them are good at seeing, hearing and seeing. Because the two extremely terrifying auras above are preparing to land on the battlefield. The fateful friends are indeed not human beings. Tren sighed as he watched the magic circle summon the pair of fateful friends. But it fits. Name: Uchiha Tom from Tom and Jerry. Abilities: Immortality, Form Change, 6 Paths Soup, Mage Soup. Strength: Immortal 6 Paths Level, Close Black Lens Bracket. Name: Senju Jerry from Tom and Jerry. Abilities: Immortality, Shape Transformation, 6 Paths Hero, Mage Hero. Strength: Immortal 6 Paths Level, Close Black Lens Bracket. It seems that the combatants of our regiment are back. Li Jing chuckled. There's going to be a lot of trouble in the days to come, these two guys, Thor held his forehead. However, they are particularly suitable for me on the battlefield. Big Grey Wolf said with an excited smile. Don't let that thing fall. Warring States was the first to speak. At the same time, Hawkeye drew his sword and flew away with a slash. Bang! The meteorite shattered into fragments and fell into the battlefield. At the same time, two figures fell in front of Tren and others, one big and one small. A blue cat wearing red armor. He holds a gourd-shaped fan and a sickle-shaped weapon in one hand. His pupils are purple with circular lines. The other one is also in red armor but is a mouse with a red spectrum painted on his face and a round scroll on his back. The two men shouted at the same time, Captain Tren. We are back. Then they looked at each other and said in unison, I got here first, Jerry. I was obviously the one who landed first, Tom. Before he finished speaking, fierce sparks burst out between the two of them, as if they were about to trigger a lightning storm. Let's argue later. Captain Tren took a small step forward and stood between the two of them. Then, he slowly raised his hands and clenched them into fists. Captain. Seeing Tron aiming his fist at themselves, Tom and Jerry immediately understood what he meant, with bright smiles on their faces. At the same time, they raised their corresponding hands and clenched their fists vigorously, and bumped together. Start the war. With this cry, it seemed as if the entire battlefield was completely ignited. Chapter 157 True. War on Top 1. Advertise here. This is what I have been waiting for. The dark source on Grey Wolf's body completely exploded, like a stream of light rushing out first. Garp. Sengoku fully activated his fruit power, and the huge golden Buddha appeared again. Got it, Sengoku. Garp was armed with both fists, but Big Wolf was not afraid at all. Instead, he directly transformed into Iron Man form on the way and punched Garp hard. Boom. Garp flew backwards and crashed into the ruins of Marinafando. Food falls from the sky. Patrick Star raised his hands high, and countless lava-shaped delicacies fell from the sky. You can't do this. Kizaru flashed forward in an instant. Just as he was about to make a move, he was knocked away by SpongeBob SquarePants, who transformed into a streamer. Hey, I'm not alone this time. Kizaru, who recovered his body, smiled slightly, and then SpongeBob walked out to the left and right, the roaring Gabu of the red-haired pirate group and the yellow-haired pirate with Lime Jones in boat logo hat. The three of them formed a triangle and surrounded Kizaru, each showing a powerful aura. This is my first time working with pirates. HMPH. Roaring Gabu snorted coldly. He couldn't speak, so he opened his mouth directly and gathered the energy cannon with great momentum. Lime Jones narrowed his eyes slightly, with a faint smile on his lips. The red-haired pirates are not easy to mess with. He. SpongeBob smiled excitedly. Facing the siege of three people, he did not show any fear, but showed a confident smile. Haha, do you three want to stop me? You are so naive. After he finished speaking, a dazzling light appeared around his body, and his whole body was as hot as the sun. Then do you know how sponges survive? Bikin Castle reproduced. Ice Age. Squidward and Aokiji activate their abilities at the same time, with the same purpose of expanding the battlefield. Let me warm up just after you come out. San Juan. The evil wolf monster smiled and used the ability of the expansion fruit to increase its body crazily. As his body continued to grow larger, he rushed towards the battlefield with heavy steps. At the same time, Tuanzi in the form of a mountain god jumped up high, like a huge bear, and let out a deafening roar. Its figure drew an arc in the air, and then hit the ground heavily. This blow was so powerful that it directly drove the San Juan wolf into the hard ice. What kind of creature is this? San Juan wolf looked at the dumpling in front of him in surprise, his heart full of doubts and shock. This strange creature actually possesses such powerful power that he cannot resist at all. Gengar. Gengar is completely super evolved, throwing around all kinds of skills on the battlefield. White Bear. I haven't done anything for a long time. White Bear is chopping melons and vegetables with one person and one axe. On the other side, Hawkeye also responded quickly. He pulled out the black knife Yi from behind without hesitation, his eyes flashing with sharp light. Sword Ghost Li Jing. Hawkeye flashed and rushed towards Li Jing like a bolt of lightning. The black sword in his hand was instantly slashed out, and a green sword energy roared out, heading straight towards Li Jing with a fierce momentum. Mahawk with dog eyes. Li Jing looked at the hawk eyes with a hint of astonishment on his face. However, he was not intimidated by Hawkeye's attack. Instead, he habitually stretched out 2 fingers and easily caught the sword energy. It's Hawkeye. Hawkeye has never been a man who keeps silent when facing a real swordsman. He was seen flashing in front of Li Jing at an extremely fast speed, and then launched several sharp slashes in succession. Every move contains endless power, making people shudder. I'm sorry, I'm used to hearing what the leader said, Li Jing said with an apologetic Kaido, and at the same time, Ba, with his left hand, still took it completely as usual. This scene seems to take Hawkeye back to when he first met this man 3 years ago. How is it possible? It's been 3 years, how could he still be so easy? The current world's best swordsman and sword ghost Li Jing, wearing the uniform of the warden from the Impel Down era, with a white coat draped behind him. Shiryu is tall and strong, with well-proportioned body proportions, a wide chin, a cigar in his mouth, and a wicked smile. Just as the two were confronting each other, a dark shadow flashed across and Shiryu appeared and joined the fight. Let me have a try too. A duel between swordsmen. He held the famous sword, Thunderstorm, and swung it towards Li Jing. However, Li Jing reacted quickly and quickly drew out the sword from his waist. Bang! With a loud noise, the two weapons collided together, causing sparks to fly. Li Jing was attacked from both sides, but he was not afraid. He held the sword in his left hand to block Hawkeye's Black Blade Knight, and his right hand Ba blocked Shiryu's famous sword, Thunderstorm. 2 versus 1. That's okay. Li Jing raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a confident smile, and his eyes were firm and sharp, as if he had seen through everything. Hawkeye watched Li Jing draw out his sword to block his weapon, and the anger in his heart dissipated instantly. He originally wanted to kill Shiryu who suddenly intervened in the battle, but now his eyes fell on Li Jing. You finally drew the sword for me, Li Jing. There was a hint of excitement and expectation in Hawkeye's voice. Ah, if you want, you can just say it. Li Jing smiled slightly, his tone relaxed and casual, as if this battle was just a game. Then what have I been doing these 3 years? Hawkeye's eyes became sharper, and he held the black knife in his hand tightly, preparing to launch a more powerful attack. World Domain. With an angry shout, Steve's equipment quickly evolved into a shining diamond armor. At this moment, Fujitora and Green Bull activated their abilities and attempted to attack Steve. However, Steve was well prepared, and he instantly created an extremely solid bedrock that blocked the attacks of Fujitora and Green Bull. Immediately afterwards, Steve turned around and took out a sharp bow and arrow, aiming at Fanoka in the distance. Fanoka was smiling proudly, thinking that he had successfully attacked Steve. However, Steve's eyes were full of anger and contempt. He drew the bow full force and shot an arrow at Fanoka. With amazing speed and power, the arrow hit Fanoka's chest accurately. How is it possible? Fanoka's eyes widened, unable to believe that he was hit so easily. His body fell weakly, blood spurting out of his mouth. Why do you get involved in adults' fights? Steve looked at Fanoka who fell on the ground indifferently, with a trace of disdain in his eyes. On the other side, Tom and Jerry faced the evil King of Aro, Crescent Hunter Tren, several Marine lieutenants, and the red-haired pirates Bendik, Bank Punch and Warrior Dar. I haven't been out for so long, I didn't expect it to be so exciting outside. Evil King of Aro laughed. Thought it was a man. I didn't expect it to be 2 guys from the fur tribe. Katrin, who possesses the 9-tails fox fruit of the phantom beast species, also sneered. You two better use your full strength. Bendik also chuckled, he was ready for this battle. Otherwise, you will be killed. Bank Punch said, and his monkey, Tats, pulled his mouth and barked randomly, as if he was also demonstrating to them. Oh, Tom's tone was doubtful, and he raised his samsara eyes, which were deep and mysterious, as if he could see through everything. He stared closely at the 4 people in front of him, with the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Have you seen me in my heyday? Upon hearing these words, the 4 people's faces became serious, and they felt the powerful aura exuding from Tom. Especially when they saw Tom's reincarnation eyes, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. You guy. Looking at Tom's eyes, the 4 of them couldn't help but frown, secretly wary in their hearts. They know that Tom's strength cannot be underestimated. Humph. Tom sneered, with a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. Forget it, I don't have much time left for you anyway, let's get started. After saying that, he slowly raised his hands, as if he was about to release a big move. Posture. Tom, you really like to pretend. Jerry looked at Tom and sighed helplessly, can't we just hit him? It has to be the big one. Susano. Tom roared, exuding a powerful aura. As his voice fell, a purple light surged out of his body and quickly gathered into a huge dog-headed giant. This giant exudes terrifying coercion, making people shudder. At the same time, Jerry was not to be outdone. He shouted. Sage art. Wood style. Senju. He saw his hands forming seals, and a mysterious power surged from his body. Become a Buddha on top. Then, a huge statue of Cousin Jerry rose from the ground. Its body was composed of countless arms, each arm holding a different weapon. It looked very powerful and domineering. What on earth is this? 2 giants suddenly appeared on the battlefield, surprising everyone. Their eyes widened and they looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. The appearance of these giants was completely beyond their scope of cognition, giving people a strong sense of oppression. At this moment, the entire battlefield fell into deathly silence, and everyone was shocked by these two giants. They forgot about the battle and their mission, and just stared blankly at these two behemoths. But, it's not over yet. I saw Tom and Jess fist bumping, Susanoing the giant Buddha. True Susano Chizo arms. This kind of power can't possibly exist. The four people looked at this scene, not at all as relaxed as they were at the beginning. Despair. This is the power of God. Tom laughed. Maybe it's just big, the evil king shouted, and then the four of them tried to destroy Susano's big toe with their armed fists. It's so ugly, but it's amazing that you have the guts to challenge me. But this is the only thing that can make me praise you. After that, Tom controlled Susanai Buddha, held the sword in his left hand, and slashed away. This knife shatters all the power of the universe. See if you can catch it. Or are you saying that you are not even qualified to dance? Chapter 158 True. War on top 2. Advertise here. Asshole. We can't let him go on like this. Warring States, who was fighting Big Wolf, looked at this scene, his face changed drastically, and he roared in his heart. He knew that if Tom and Jerry continued to attack like this, the consequences would be disastrous. Without any hesitation, Seng Guo instantly rushed out of his body and ran straight over, leaving Grey Wolf alone with Garp. He knew that someone had to stand up and stop him at this time, because the largest number of people present was Marine. Under an attack of this level, the most likely to die would be Marine. Buddha's wrath. Warring States roared angrily, fully releasing his fruit power. An extremely powerful shock wave erupted from his body, hitting Susanna's left side like a cannonball, forcibly knocking him out of the main battlefield. I will do the next battle. Warring States shouted, his voice full of firmness and determination. He knows that this battle has reached a critical moment, and as Fleet Admiral, he must do his best to protect everyone's safety. Oh, the corners of Tom's mouth raised slightly, and a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. He looked at Warring States and said softly, "You are qualified to dance." This sentence was not only a recognition of Warring States' strength, but also a praise for his courage. At this moment, Warring States showed the true demeanor of a strong man. How about you let me say a few words? Jerry, who had been silent all this time, said. You don't know what pretense is. Jerry. Quote. On various battlefields, flames of war raged, and shouts of killing occurred one after another. On the Black Pearl, ninjas from the Shadow Legion kept appearing. They jumped off the ship without hesitation and started a fierce battle with Marine. The platelets were armed with Gatling and fired wildly. The firepower was so fierce that it almost dyed the ice red. Fortunately, Big Wolf's invention and Steve's forging technology allowed these weapons to maintain efficient operation without overheating or malfunction. In the chaos, Xiao He stood at the bow of the boat, his eyes firm and focused. In front of him is the control panel, which is the latest technological achievement supplied by Big Wolf using the energy of the Thunder Fruit, the energy shield generator. This device can generate a powerful energy shield to protect the ship from enemy attacks. I'm useful too. Xiao He pressed the button, and a blue light shot out from the generator and spread quickly, forming a solid shield that enveloped the Black Pearl, and at the same time there was thunder. Is this what you expected? The red-haired man looked at Tren in front of him and held Griffin tightly. No, don't you think it's strange to say this from your perspective as a pirate? Shanks. Tren's voice was low and powerful, but with a hint of sarcasm. The conversation between the two was short and full of tension, and the air around them seemed to freeze, as if time had stopped at this moment. Tren and Shanks stood opposite each other, their eyes firm and sharp, as if they were two sharp swords, ready to pierce each other's chest at any time. Tren gently pulled out the gambler from his waist. The blade shone coldly under the reflection of the sun and the ice, and Shanks slowly raised his griffin. Come on, Shanks shouted, his voice shaking the sky, and he took the lead in attacking. His body rushed towards Tren like a cannonball, and Griffin drew sharp trajectories in the air, as fast as lightning. God avoids. I won't avoid it. General Tren also slashed, gambling horizontally, and the two weapons collided. In an instant, with the two at the center, the entire ice surface shattered, like detonated bombs, with water splashing everywhere. For a moment, the two of them retreated together, but Shanks did not hesitate. The moment he landed, he rushed out again, like an arrow leaving the string, as fast as lightning. Tren didn't dare to be careless, relying on his self-healing ability and unconscious dodge to cleverly dodge Shanks' every attack. As the battle progressed, the speed of the two became faster and faster, and the shadows of their swords intertwined with each other, making a crisp collision sound. Tren used his abilities to constantly test on the edge of life and death, while Shanks showed the power of his conqueror's domineering force, with every blow carrying overwhelming momentum, like a mountain bearing down on him. After a fierce confrontation, the two took a few steps back at the same time to adjust their breathing. Tren felt the pain in his arm, but his self-healing ability came into effect quickly, and the wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. There's something wrong with your strength. When Shanks saw this, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, as if a stone was suddenly thrown into the calm lake, causing ripples. You must know that 3 years ago, he was scared away by Tren who had not drawn his sword, but now he found out that Tren's strength, it was just that his dodge was very buggy, but maybe it was because he was strong because of his knowledge and lust. Don't scream, it's just bad luck. Tren responded by holding the gambling tightly, sheathing it and drawing the sword. Then. You have no chance. Shank's voice was cold and firm, as if it was the whisper of a devil from hell. His eyes were full of murderous intent, as if he wanted to devour Tren. Now that the opportunity is in front of him, Shanks will not hesitate. He doesn't care whether Tren is pretending or not. The battle has entered a fierce stage, and Tren's body is covered with scars, but his self-healing ability prevents him from falling. His body continues to repair itself during the battle. You are really weak. Shank's eyes narrowed slightly, and a powerful aura erupted from his body. Conqueror's domineering energy wrapped around Griffin like a substance, causing Griffin to shine with a black light. In that case, fall down. Shanks roared angrily, swung his arm violently, and Griffin slashed out at extremely fast speeds with terrifying power. God's avoidance. The power of this blow was extremely terrifying, even the space was torn apart, and a long black crack appeared. However, at this moment, a white and tender hand suddenly grabbed Griffin easily, as if it was not an extremely sharp sword, but a soft marshmallow. Bang! With a muffled sound, Griffin's offensive was stopped instantly, and Shank's face became very ugly. Well, even though the leader said it, I'm still a little unhappy. Thor frowned. She was holding Griffin in her hand, feeling the wind that kept blowing her hair, and she felt a little irritated. This woman. Before Shanks could finish his words, he saw Thor kick out. Shanks flew out like a cannonball, shooting all the way through the Malinfando fortress, and finally hit the city wall hard on, making a loud noise. You're not going to kill someone with one kick, are you? Thor. Tren looked at the direction Shanks flew out and swallowed. Probably, maybe. Thor touched his chin. Bang. Shanks rushed out of the ruins, covered his chest, knelt down and vomited a mouthful of blood. Isn't this woman going to be dealt with by Beckman and the guys from the Blackbeard Pirates? Thinking of this, Shanks turned around and looked. Beckman was almost embedded in the ice, and the same was true for the drunkards of the Blackbeard Pirates. I'm going to help Sadako. Thor looked at Shanks, clapped his hands, and turned to leave. Look, I'm so kind to you, Shanks. Tren looked at Shanks and smiled. Are you so kind? Shanks gasped, because if it was the woman just now, she could really kill him. Of course not. Tren's eyes darkened, and the gambling on his waist was about to move, as if waiting for the moment to be unsheathed. No, your breath. In just a moment, Shanks was keenly aware that something was wrong. You just cut me, didn't you have a great time cutting me? The corner of Tren's mouth raised slightly, with a sarcastic smile. As he slowly walked towards Shanks, he gently pulled out the knife from his waist. At the same time, the ice around Tren began to melt, and an extremely strong high temperature spread quickly, as if a ferocious flame beast was roaring on the ice. The flame that burns everything is both burning and extinguishing. Get out of the sheath. Tren's voice was low and powerful, as if it were a whisper coming from the abyss, containing endless power. As Tren pulled out the knife, a raging fire suddenly burst out behind him, like a volcano erupting. His figure gradually changed, his figure became slightly taller, and his pupils turned into bright red, like burning flames. And the sword that was originally hidden in the sheath was finally completely pulled out and displayed in front of your eyes. Gamble, Kanhuotai sword. Chapter 159 True. War on Top 3. Advertise here. Tren held the handle of the knife tightly, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and then the tip of the remnant fire sword touched the ground slightly. Bang! In an instant, with Tren as the center, countless pillars of fire erupted around him, and the ice under Tren's feet melted into a semicircle, and Tren stood floating in the air. Next, round 2. Is this your devil fruit ability? Jenny Tren. Shanks gritted his teeth and looked at what was happening in front of him, his heart filled with anger. He held the griffin in his hand tightly, with a look of determination in his eyes. At the next moment, Shanks rushed out again at an alarming speed. In an instant, he appeared in front of Tren, lowered half of his body, and Griffin, possessing the power of domination, slashed horizontally, shouting, Speed God. Cut. Bump. A very slight sound of weapon collision resounded throughout the audience. Shanks looked at the remnant fire taseward, blocking his Griffin in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. Especially when he found that Tren's eyes did not even look down, he felt a sense of despair. Masaka. Shanks muttered to himself, feeling powerless in his heart. However, at this time, Tren lowered his head slightly and said with a sneer, I said, the second round has just begun. As soon as he finished speaking, the remnant fire sword in Tren's hand suddenly ignited into a raging fire, and then, with a knee-lifting movement, he directly pushed Shanks up. Cough. Shanks couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of bitter water, his body shaking violently in the air. Flame slash. Tren looked at Shanks who was pushed up, and without hesitation waved the remnant fire Teisho in his hand and slashed horizontally. Following the direction of the sword slash, a slash of sword slash energy with blazing flames streaked across like a meteor, carrying endless power. A slash was directed towards Shanks' chest, and Shanks flew backwards, but it wasn't over yet. Shanks was still flying upside down, and Tren had already flashed behind him, holding the remnant fire Teisho in front of his chest. Yan 2. Tren shouted, and that remnant fire sword thrust forward, hitting Shanks' back. Shanks sensed the danger behind him, but due to previous attacks, he could no longer avoid it completely. At the critical moment, he reluctantly twisted his body, so that the tip of the remnant fire sword only pierced his left shoulder, which was already broken. Blood spurted out and stained Tren's blade red, but the blood evaporated instantly. Shanks endured the severe pain and took advantage of Tren's impact to roll forward, trying to distance himself. I didn't try to hide just now. However, Tren didn't give him a chance to breathe. He waved the remnant fire sword and quickly followed up. The sword slashed down, but Shanks still reluctantly turned away, but what he saw next was an even more terrifying ability. The moment the tip of the remnant fire sword touched the ground, the ice surface instantly cracked in the direction it was heading. A huge abyss. How could this be human power? Shanks was filled with fear and shock. He had never seen such a powerful force, which had exceeded the limits of human beings. Sorry, I didn't hold back just now. Tren smiled slightly, as if everything was under his control, but don't worry, I won't let you break into two pieces instantly. After saying that, he launched another attack. The remnant fire taseward in his hand turned into sharp sword lights and attacked Shanks. Every slash carries unparalleled power, making it impossible to resist. Just like what Tren said, Shanks really didn't cut Shanks in half directly. After all, it took him so long to draw the knife before he won the prize. How could it end so quickly? Tren hasn't had enough fun yet. Damn it, damn it, Shanks roared in his heart, but his body could no longer keep up with his thoughts. There were more and more wounds on his body, and blood kept pouring out, dyeing his clothes and surroundings red, of ground. He widened his eyes, looking at the attack in front of him that he could not defend against, and his heart was filled with anger and unwillingness. Are you kidding me? Jenny Tren. Shanks gritted his teeth, endured the pain, and continued to wave the sword in his hand with one arm, stubbornly resisting Tren's attack. He knew that if he gave up now, it would mean death. Whoops. Suddenly, Tren flashed in front of Shanks like a burning flame. What? Do you have any objections? Tren's amber-red pupils were cold and ruthless, looking at Shanks as if he were a dead person. The voice was cold and sarcastic, making people shudder. Or, do you want to ask again? Maybe I will give you face. Shanks felt the hot breath coming from his neck. He knew clearly that the weapon named Remnant Fire Sword was pressed against his neck. With just a slight movement, he could easily cut his throat. However, what really frightens Shanks is that there is a huge flaming slash coming right in front of him. This flame slash was as hot as a volcanic eruption, carrying endless destructive power, as if it was going to burn the entire world to ashes. Faced with such a powerful attack, Shanks almost despaired. He no longer had the strength to resist this blow, and could only watch helplessly as the flame slash attacked him. Is this the end? Shanks is unwilling to give in, but there is nothing he can do. Whoops. At this moment, a figure rushed towards Tren as quickly as lightning, and the knife in his hand struck straight at him. There was only a loud sound of bang, bang. Tren reacted very quickly. He easily defended the attack with a backhand, and then kicked out. The figure was knocked away dozens of meters away, and was hit hard. After smashing into the ice, his body bounced up and down on the ice several times before finally stopping. You're still old. The figure slowly stood up, looked at the broken ordinary blade in his hand, and smiled helplessly. Then he frowned tightly, took off the cloak on his body, revealing his long snow-white hair and a pair of round-framed transparent glasses, and finally raised his old face. The last time we met, I knew you were a careless brat. Boy Tren, he said softly. Pluton Rayleigh. Taren looked at the person in front of him and frowned slightly. Rayleigh. Shanks on the side took advantage of this opportunity and successfully escaped from Tren's attack range. Boy Tren, end this war. Rayleigh said to Tren with a serious face, this has no meaning anymore. Look at the battlefields around you. Countless lives are passing by endlessly. You didn't save the captain's son, but you took action over and over again as an intern. Ha ha. Tren smiled, with a hint of disdain and ridicule in his laughter, and looked at Rayleigh, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. However, facing Tren's ridicule, Rayleigh did not respond, but turned to look at Shanks aside. I saw Shanks walking up to Rayleigh with a serious face, his eyes fixed on the saber on Rayleigh's waist. That knife was the ace that Roger gave to Rayleigh. Rayleigh, Shanks whispered, his eyes revealing his expectation and trust for Rayleigh. Rayleigh nodded slightly, then reached for the saber at his waist and gently held the handle. His eyes became sharp, as if he was ready for battle at any time. If you still want to do this, I can only take action with all my strength. Jenny Tren. His tone was full of confidence and provocation. Really, old guy. As Taran's words fell, a powerful aura emanated from him. It was the domineering aura of a strong man, which made people feel depressed and suffocated. However, Rayleigh was not intimidated by Tren's momentum. He took a deep breath, and then suddenly pulled out the saber from his waist. A cold light flashed, and Ace appeared in front of everyone. Although this means bullying the younger generation, it's really annoying that you ignore the passing of life. Rayleigh's voice was low and powerful, and his eyes flashed with determination. After hearing what Rayleigh said, Tren looked at the ace in Rayleigh's hand and was secretly surprised. I didn't expect that Rayleigh would choose to use Roger's knife against him. At this moment, Shanks also took a step forward and stood side by side with Rayleigh. The two of them faced Tren together, showing unparalleled conqueror's momentum. Looking at the two people, Tren smiled and sighed. If my adventure group was beaten to death at this time, wouldn't you have another story? Forget it, you two should still worry about whether your lives will pass away. Because I don't want to play anymore. Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, Tren raised the remnant fire sword, and then, with him as the center, countless flames burst out of the air, and raging fire spewed out like a volcano, swallowing up everything around him in an instant. Terran's body was even surrounded by flames, wrapping him tightly like armor. The cold ice suddenly turned into a fiery hell, as if it was about to burn the whole world. The clouds in the sky were dyed red and rolled, seeming to indicate that a terrible disaster was about to come. Immediately afterwards, a sky-reaching flame rushed out from Tren's feet and reached straight into the sky. This flame is like a giant dragon rising into the sky, with endless power and power, shocking people's hearts. However, just when everyone thought that this firestorm would continue, suddenly everything became extremely quiet, and all the high temperature and flames disappeared without a trace in an instant. It was like they had never appeared before. At this time, special tattoos began to spread on Tren's arms. These tattoos extended to the palm of his hand holding the knife, as if the knife and the person had become one. And the clothes on his body have also undergone a complete transformation, becoming more gorgeous and mysterious. Completely understood, Tren roared in a low voice, revealing an unparalleled majesty in his voice. Chapter 160 True. War on Top 4. Advertise here. Come together. With a loud shout, Rayleigh and Shanks rushed forward as fast as lightning. Their figures intertwined in the sky, forming two streams of light, one blue and one red, like meteors streaking across the sky, alternately rushing toward Tren. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had reached the left and right sides of Tren, and the speed was staggering. At the same time, they almost simultaneously performed one of One Piece Roger's famous stunts, which was astonishingly powerful. The weapons in their hands were shining with a strange light, as if they were integrated with the surrounding air. When they waved their weapons, a powerful force burst out instantly, forming an invisible barrier that enveloped Tren. God. Avoid. Seeing the two people working together to attack, Tren looked calm, opened his lips slightly, and said softly, Swastika, Vulcan. The battle is about to break out, and Tren quickly activates the first interpretation of the residual fire sword, Vulcan. Bang. After the words fell, strong flames erupted from Tren's body. His whole body was wrapped in flame armor, and the high temperature of the flames even distorted the air. Its explosive momentum allowed Rayleigh and Shanks to be easily knocked back. Taking advantage of this, Tren rushed towards Rayleigh and Shanks, who were knocked away at an alarming speed. He's coming. Not to be outdone, Rayleigh used Conqueror's domineering power and top swordsmanship to fight back, then counterattacked. We can't let him take it easy. Shanks gritted his teeth, and Griffin tightened his grip, adjusted his posture, and rushed away. The two purposes are the same, which is to make Tren 1 against 2. Shanks' Griffin has thunderous momentum, while Rayleigh's ace-attached domination seems to break the world with every blow. Unfortunately, Tren in Vulcan form made him nearly invincible for a certain period of time, which brought the battle between Rayleigh and Shanks to a stalemate. Bang! As time passed, Tren finally seized the opportunity and slashed the two of them back with one knife. The fire on him has dissipated. The opportunity has come. Looking at the two people rushing over again, Tren swiped his sword horizontally, and then slammed the tip of the residual fire sword into the ground. Explanation. Flame hell. In an instant, the entire battlefield turned into a flame hell. The raging fire separated the battlefield, forcing Shanks and Rayleigh to separate. Taking advantage of the chaotic situation created by the flame hell, Tren decided to focus on attacking one of them first. Beat you first. He chose to pursue the relatively isolated Rayleigh without hesitation. Trouble. Rayleigh frowned, then quickly distanced himself from Tren and began to escape frantically. You know, even beings as powerful as them will not give up their lives to fight easily. Facing an invincible opponent, most people will choose to run away to save their lives. In the fierce chase, Tren continued to release powerful slashes to suppress Rayleigh and gradually weaken his combat effectiveness. Ahem. Although Rayleigh tried his best to resist, he gradually felt powerless under Tren's fierce offensive. Rayleigh. At this moment, Shanks suddenly jumped out from the side, brandishing the knife in his hand, and struck Tren hard. It's unnecessary. However, this blow did not pose much threat to Tren, but was easily repulsed by Tren with a backhand. Almost. It just so happens that you two are here. Tren looked at the exhausted Rayleigh and Shanks in front of him and said calmly. As time passes and their resistance becomes weaker and weaker, Tren realizes that now is the time to end this battle. What do you mean? Rayleigh and Shanks were stunned at the same time, not understanding why Tren would say such a thing. Don't you know it just by looking at it? Tren smiled slightly, then clenched the hilt of the sword with both hands, and whispered, Swastika, realm of remnant fire. As his words fell, the surrounding air instantly became extremely hot, and a powerful flame force burst out from Tren's body. The temperature was extremely high, as if it could melt everything. Rayleigh and Shanks felt this strong pressure, and their faces became extremely solemn. Tren held the residual fire sword high, like a god of war. He swung the sword with all his strength. The residual fire sword drew a gorgeous arc in the air, and then drew a huge circle on the battlefield, forming a restricted flame field. This realm of flames traps Tren, Shanks, and Rayleigh within it. In this field, the power of the residual fire sword has been further amplified, making it even more powerful. Tren didn't give the two of them any chance to breathe. He held the residual fire sword in front of him, and then the blade spurted out blazing flames, instantly igniting the entire battlefield. At this moment, his strength reached its peak. I'm going to die. Rayleigh's eyes widened and he looked at everything in front of him in horror. He seemed to have seen the fate of himself and Shanks, and a feeling of despair surged in his heart. However, at this moment, Rayleigh suddenly turned his head and stared firmly at Shanks beside him. He knows that he is old and belongs to the old era, but Shanks is different. He still has a future and must not fall here. Rayleigh. Seeing Rayleigh staring at him, Shanks looked suspicious, but now he was more concerned about how to deal with Tren. Shanks, put Ace away. Rayleigh handed Ace over directly. Looking at the Ace handed over by Rayleigh, Shanks didn't react for a moment. Thunder. Shanks was still confused in his heart. Swastika. Tren moved quickly within the field, releasing hot flaming sword energy and finally struck with a powerful flaming slash. Burn the world. Shanks live. Rayleigh was instantly armed and protected Shanks, but the slash easily penetrated Rayleigh's defense and killed him. At this time, Shanks witnessed Rayleigh's death, his pupils trembled slightly, and at the same time, his left thigh was also cut off. Then he lost consciousness and sank into the sea along with Rayleigh's body. Is he dead? On the battlefield, Tron looked at the half of Rayleigh that looked like a burnt corpse in front of him, and frowned, without much joy or satisfaction. At this moment, an earth-shattering shout came from the other side of the battlefield. Ace. Ah. Ah. This voice was full of pain, despair and anger, as if it was about to tear the entire sky apart. This was Luffy's cry, his voice filled with endless sadness and anger, spreading throughout the entire battlefield. Everyone was shocked by the sudden shout, and they all turned their heads and looked in the direction of Luffy. Luffy's face was filled with tears, and his eyes revealed unspeakable grief and anger. His body was trembling, as if he might collapse at any moment. In front of him, Ace's figure was slowly falling down, and the flames on his body were gradually extinguished. Chapter 161 True. War on Top 5. Advertise here. Going back a little bit in time, Tron had just faced off against Rayleigh and Shanks. On the other side, even if everyone in the Whitebeard Pirates doesn't want to get involved in the battlefield, there is nothing they can do, let alone leave. The battle between Squidward and Aokiji, Akainu and Patrick alone has almost changed the weather in Malinfando. Snowflakes continued to fall in the sky, thick layers of ice formed on the ground, and the entire battlefield was covered with ice and snow. The battle between Akainu and Patrick sparked a raging fire, and the flames engulfed everything around them, in stark contrast to the ice and snow. Dad, the ship can't move at all, and the ice surface is getting wider and wider, and the thickness is getting deeper and deeper. Marco said, looking at Whitebeard, who had recovered after a short treatment. At this time, the Whitebeard Pirates and the Prison Break team are almost the only two forces on the battlefield that are neutral, or that just want to escape. But in such a big melee, there is no such thing as neutrality. They can either join the fight or be eliminated. Bang! A loud noise came, and the bear was knocked away and hit hard behind Whitebeard and the others. His left arm had been cut off by Steve, exposing the mechanical parts inside, but the bear did not stop because of this, and instead used the fruit's ability to rush into the battlefield again. You know, Steve alone was able to hold back 4 powerful enemies: Fujitora, Green Bull, Bear and Doflamingo. Are all the Terran Adventure Group monsters? Marco muttered in shock, his eyes fixed on the battlefield, especially the two giants fighting each other on the west side of the battlefield. Their strength was simply beyond imagination. He swallowed hard, feeling a strong uneasiness in his heart. We must leave and return to the New World, Whitebeard said seriously. He had already foreseen how disastrous the consequences of this battle would be. At this moment, Ace hurried over and looked at Whitebeard with concern. After all, Whitebeard broke into Marineford's inner court alone and fought against several general-level enemies. How could he not be injured? At this moment, his wounds were only simply bandaged. I'm sorry, it was my willfulness that caused everyone. Ace's voice was choked, and his eyes were filled with self-blame and regret. Whitebeard smiled happily and patted Ace's shoulder gently. Ace. You are my son. His words were full of fatherly love and tolerance, as if nothing mattered as long as Ace was safe. But isn't Ace's father Roger? Luffy, who was too exhausted to move, was held by Jinbei, his eyes flashing with doubt. Lu la la la. Whitebeard smiled, and his laughter was like a warm spring breeze, blowing away the doubts in Luffy's heart. That's my son too, Whitebeard said, extending his hand to Luffy again. You can be my son too. Huh. Luffy had a look of disgust on his face, as if he had eaten a fly. Hey, Ace knocked him directly on the forehead, and his voice sounded like thunder in Luffy's ears. What's your expression? Lu la la la. While Whitebeard and the others were enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, Akainu, who was fighting Patrick Star, looked extremely gloomy. He is not a fool, the current situation has become clear, the decision to cooperate with the red-haired pirates is obviously a big failure. Nowadays, Marine is completely defeated, even losing all his underwear. A pirate will be a pirate after all. Akainu gritted his teeth and cursed in his mind. At this moment, he suddenly looked at Teach, who had been approaching Whitebeard. Although it was only a short moment, both of them caught the anticipation in each other's eyes. At this moment, a heart-to-heart scene appeared. Teach is a pure and extremely ambitious person. He has never wavered in his plans. He is determined to get Whitebeard's shocking fruit because it is the first step towards his goal, so he will never take it easy. Give up. Akainu's view of justice is absolute. Faced with such an unfavorable situation at this moment, he firmly believes that only by adhering to the original plan can he save Marine's face and take responsibility for the sacrificed Marine soldiers. And the original plan was to kill the Whitebeard pirates and Ace. This is an explanation to the world government, and it is also an explanation to the dead Marine. The two didn't speak, but they achieved their goals in this short period of looking at each other. Dark Acupoint. Teach attacked Pai Daxing directly and fully used the ability of the dark fruit. Immediately, a large area of darkness was released, and anyone who touched it would be sucked in, sink, and crushed. But for Patrick, he could only be sucked in and controlled for a minute or two. But 1 or 2 minutes on this chaotic battlefield is enough. Thieves ha 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 ha. Liberation. Teach directly released all the debris of a large number of objects absorbed by the darkness on the battlefield at the position of Whitebeard and others. Teach. The appearance of Blackbeard instantly made everyone in the Whitebeard pirates hate him. Even Jinbei, who was holding Luffy, turned his attention to Blackbeard. Dad, I'm here to take you on your way. Teach laughed. You have no right to call me daddy. Teach. Fire fist. Ace immediately dealt with what Teach released. Fall down, Whitebeard. Dark Hound. At this moment Akainu rushed out, his left hand turned into lava and stretched out. This move is his fastest attack. He was smart and didn't attack Ace or Luffy because he knew Ace's character clearly. So, Dark Hound, with armed colors goes straight to Whitebeard. Kwang, Whitebeard reacted very quickly, and instantly wanted to use the fruit's ability to knock the two people away, but he didn't know Teach's ability. Dark Water. Blackbeard flashed to his left hand that released the power, allowing the shock fruit power to be absorbed. Dad, this is the power I got. Teach laughed wildly, so, go to hell. Just when Dark Hound was about to penetrate Whitebeard's heart, there was still that flame. Only this time, no one was blocking the attack. Time stood still at this moment. You can say he is stupid, but it was Whitebeard who gave him the feeling of a father. It was Whitebeard who made him understand what a father is. Whitebeard is the father in his heart. So when he faced the moment when his father was about to die in front of him, he couldn't escape. Ace blocked his body without thinking. The hot lava penetrated Ace's chest, and at this moment his internal organs were almost burned out. Bang! Ace's legs went weak and he knelt down. Luffy's scream came from behind. But Ace's eyes were fixed on Whitebeard. He leaned on Whitebeard's chest, tears kept flowing. He didn't say anything, he just apologized blindly. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He's sorry for his dead partner, he's sorry for everything Whitebeard did for him, he's sorry for Luffy. At this moment, Ace's voice stopped suddenly as he apologized. His body gradually cooled down in Whitebeard's arms, and the heat of life gradually dissipated. Yearning for freedom, the burning flame eventually goes out. Whitebeard silently held Ace's body, his eyes revealing endless sadness and pain. He didn't speak, but held his son tightly, as if he wanted to bury all the grief in his heart. Akainu, you bastard. Teach finally realized that he had been deceived by Akainu. Akainu's goal has never been Whitebeard, but Ace. Teach roared angrily, but before he finished speaking, a powerful and terrifying aura suddenly burst out from Whitebeard. This conqueror's domineering energy is like a surging tsunami, sweeping away in all directions. The nearby Marines and Marine lieutenant generals fainted and fell to the ground, unable to withstand the pressure. Even Marco and other captains felt dizzy and almost fainted. Dad. Marco looked at the Whitebeard holding Ace's body, his heart filled with grief and helplessness. He gritted his teeth and held back tears, his eyes full of anger towards Akainu and worry about Whitebeard. Whitebeard's conqueror's dominance plunged the entire battlefield into deathly silence, and everyone felt the power and majesty of this legendary pirate. Damn it! Teach was about to run away without saying a word. However, just when he turned around, he found that a huge figure appeared behind him, completely shrouding him in shadow. Teach. Whitebeard's cold voice came from above Teach's head. When Teach heard this voice, his expression suddenly changed. He turned around and saw Whitebeard standing in front of him, looking at him coldly. Dad, I am your son. Teach shouted in horror, trying to wake up Whitebeard with his fatherly love and remind him of the father-son relationship they once had. Whitebeard didn't say anything. He raised his hand, swung out his fist with armed domineering force, and punched Teach hard with all his strength. Bang! There was a loud noise, and Teach's body flew backwards like a cannonball, hitting the ruins in the distance heavily. Smoke and dust filled the air, and Teach lay motionless on the ground, his eyes turned white and his breath was weak. Whitebeard. Akainu looked at the Whitebeard in front of him, with a trace of fear and surprise in his eyes. Just now, Whitebeard's speed at killing Teach shocked him so much that even he couldn't see it clearly. At this moment, the tall, old man standing in front of him, holding a Kong Yunchi, seemed to have returned to the peak period when he had yellow hair. Sakaski. Whitebeard gently grasped his left hand, and the entire space instantly became distorted. I saw pieces of mirror-like fragments and cracks exploding in space, as if the whole world was shattered at this moment. At this moment, the man who was known as the strongest in the world has never been so angry. Chapter 162 True. War on Top, 6. Advertise here. Facing this man, the atmosphere was tense and solemn. But Akainu is an absolutely righteous man, and he will not choose to run away when facing pirates. Whitebeard. The sea breeze roared across the ice, raising an icy wind and blowing the corners of Akainu's clothes. His body began to gradually turn red, like a ball of burning lava. Whitebeard stood quietly in front of him, his body as tall as a mountain, and the power of the shaking fruit spread around him, making the entire sea seem to tremble under his anger. Akainu even took off his hat and gently stroked his hair with a disdainful smile on his face. Whitebeard, how long can you sustain your old age? However, before he could finish his words, Whitebeard's fist with the ability to shock fruit had already appeared on his face like lightning. Die. Whitebeard's voice rolled in like thunder, and in an instant, space cracks began to break from Akainu's head. Crack. Bang. This punch contained powerful power, making Akainu fly out in a straight line at an extremely fast speed like a cannonball. Phew. Whitebeard instantly flashed behind Akainu at an astonishing speed, waved his right arm vigorously, and punched him hard again. Cough. Akainu received this blow on his back. Fortunately, Whitebeard was still old, otherwise he would not have had time to use his armor to cover his defense. After all, this blow could have broken his spine. After Akainu was knocked away, he adjusted his posture in the air and tried to stabilize his body. He felt the power of Whitebeard's punch, but as a marine general, he would never give in easily. Whitebeard, stay. Akainu roared angrily, activated his rock berry ability, and his whole body was wrapped in hot magma, like a burning meteor, rushing towards Whitebeard. Whitebeard's eyes were fixed and he did not flinch. He waved his huge fist and collided with Akainu's magma. Suddenly, the space shattered and lava splashed everywhere, and the shock waves swept around, shaking the entire battlefield. After the two sides were in a stalemate for a moment, Whitebeard suddenly exerted his strength, grabbed Akainu's head, and then smashed it down with all his strength. Ah! Akainu's whole body was deformed by the shock, and the deep ice surface was completely cracked like a spider web. Akainu's head was covered with blood and he was in a state of disarray, but he still stood tenaciously and glared at Whitebeard. Haha, you are really old. Whitebeard. Whitebeard did not stop, he continued to attack, swinging his huge fist and punching Akainu. There was a whistling sound in the air, and Akainu reacted quickly. His body instantly turned into lava, and then he rushed forward, trying to fight Whitebeard in close combat. After being knocked away again, Akainu pressed his hands on an abandoned pirate ship, and the entire ship began to turn red, as if it was wrapped in lava. Then, lava bombs erupted from the hull and went straight towards Whitebeard. Whitebeard didn't say anything. He used the power of the shaking fruit and punched the ice directly under his feet. He raised a huge ice wall and not only easily blocked the lava bomb, but also pushed it back towards Akainu. This guy. A trace of surprise flashed in Akainu's eyes, but he did not flinch. He vertically turned his body into a giant lava dragon and rushed towards Whitebeard. Whitebeard roared, and used the power of the shock fruit to form a huge invisible wave, instantly shattering the lava dragon. Akainu jumped out of the broken lava, his expression slightly changed. Is this all you have? Sakaski. Whitebeard sneered and activated the fruit shaking ability again. The entire space began to shake violently, and the surrounding sea was crumbling in the fluctuations. Whitebeard. Akainu stabilized his body, concentrated, condensed the lava into his fist, and met Whitebeard's power head-on. The two people's power formed a huge vortex on the sea, lava and cracks intertwined, bursting out with dazzling light. The surrounding walruses became violent and restless due to the power of Whitebeard, and huge waves surged into the sky, as if it was the end of the world. Masaka, how can you still have this kind of power? Akainu's face showed a look of shock. He felt a powerful force, which came from the 70-year-old man in front of him, Whitebeard. Whitebeard's power far exceeded his imagination. If Whitebeard were 30, no, 20 years younger, he wouldn't even dare to think about it. Faced with Whitebeard's terrifying power, Akainu was ultimately defeated. He tried his best, but still couldn't resist Whitebeard's attack. Whitebeard seized the opportunity and launched a series of fierce attacks again. Every time Whitebeard swings his fist, his shaking force will cause the entire sea area to shake, and even the space will be distorted. Akainu knew that he could not be passively beaten all the time. He had to find a breakthrough and try to use his lava fruit ability to fight back. However, whenever he attacks, Whitebeard can always easily neutralize his attack. Whitebeard looked at Akainu desperately resisting, with a trace of killing intent flashing in his eyes. Blood oozed from the corners of his mouth, and his body was almost reaching its limit. At this time, all his old injuries burst out, causing him great pain. But he did not give up, but continued to increase the intensity of his attacks, hoping to end the battle as soon as possible. The power of the earthquake was activated more frequently, and the feeling of each vibration and shattering made Akainu feel great pain. However, Akainu did not give up. As the saying goes, people are afraid of punches when young and afraid of strength. Although he kept getting beaten, he felt it. Whitebeard was about to die. Akainu began to change his tactics. Instead of direct confrontation, he tried to trap Whitebeard with lava. His body turned into countless lava bombs, attacking Whitebeard from all directions. Whitebeard had to be distracted from dealing with these lava bombs, which gave Akainu a chance to breathe. Akainu reassembled his human form, took a deep breath, first turned his arms into lava, then turned the lava arms into the shape of a dog's head and extended his lava limbs to attack. Dog bites Gurren. When Whitebeard saw this, he showed no sign of weakness. He concentrated all his strength on his fists, and then struck a devastating punch with fruit-shaking power. This punch not only contains the power to shake the space, but also has the momentum to tear everything apart. Shocked. Possessing top attack power, it can cause devastating damage to the enemy's body. The lava fruit and the strongest paramesha shock power. The two forces met on the sea, resulting in an unimaginable huge explosion, and the battle reached its climax. The entire sea surface has become more and more unstable due to Whitebeard's frequent battles. The waves are rolling, thunder and lightning are coming, and the clouds are splitting, as if it heralds the coming doomsday. When the dust from the explosion gradually fell, Akainu and Whitebeard both suffered varying degrees of trauma, each standing on the broken battlefield, staring at each other. How is it possible? Akainu muttered to himself, with disbelief in his voice. His eyes were full of shock and confusion, as if he couldn't accept what was happening in front of him. Immediately afterwards, his body lost strength and he fell to the ground helplessly. At the same time, Whitebeard looked down at the big hole in his chest. Blood was pouring out of the wound, but he did not show much pain or fear. On the contrary, he held Kong Yunchi tightly in his hand, endured the pain, and tried to stabilize his body. Cough, cough, cough. Following a violent cough, mouthfuls of blood continued to cough out from the mouth. However, despite the serious injury, Whitebeard still insisted on walking forward, dragging his mutilated body step by step closer to Ace's body. Every step seemed extremely difficult, but his eyes were always firmly fixed on the front. Finally, he walked to Ace's side, squatted down, and carefully took Ace's body into his arms. Chapter 163 True. War on Top 7. Advertise here. Whitebeard was squatting there. No one knew what he was thinking. Dad. Marco kicked Marine away as he rushed towards him. Looking at this scene, he felt indescribably sad. Because of Akainu's attack, the Whitebeard pirates, who had gathered to retreat to the New World, were completely at war with Marine. The same goes for the escape team of Luffy and others. In order to break out of Marine Fando, they ran around in various battlefields. On this side of the Black Pearl, the platelets still looked soft and cute, but they imitated Gatling's gunshots with the cutest sounds. Even under the command of Platelet Number 1, they can fire in an organized and rhythmic manner. I finally boarded. Ah. A Marine was cut to the throat by a ninja from the Shadow Legion as soon as he stepped onto the deck. Keep dancing. What? You can't even dance now. On the Chiaki Suzano Titan, Tom looked wild and showed Uchiha's signature smile. Soup. Forget it. Just keep laughing. Jerry knelt down and sipped a cup of tea brought from nowhere. At the same time, Suzano, who was wearing a giant Buddha, had given up using weapons and used his fists to beat Sengoku back again and again. Since when did the Fur tribe have such strong men? And what they are good at is not transforming into moon lions. Warring States was injured, but still persisted. Why? Tell me, why? Hawkeye looked at Li Jing and shouted, why can you take over all my sword skills? You want to know? Looking at the panting Hawkeye, Li Jing touched his beard, his expression darkened, and then he slowly raised his eyes. Yes. Looking at Li Jing's expression, Yingyan swallowed and nodded seriously. Haha, how about you tell me a question that I'm curious about? Li Jing said calmly. Tell me everything you know. Eagle eyes looked at Li Jing, and the excitement in his heart could no longer be suppressed. Is this the exchange between the two most powerful swordsmen in the world? He finally experienced it. Then tell me, every time you tie A, are you thinking silently in your heart, the super invincible luxury twin turbocharged slash of the universe? Hawkeye. No, buddy, your image has changed. Are you serious? Are you depressed? Ah, I'm just curious. Look at you Lu Shi. After all the shouting, your throat is probably dry. My name is Shiryu. My throat is not dry, I vomited a lot of blood, cough. Shiryu was lying on the side covered in blood, with his famous sword, Thunderstorm, inserted not far away. This is a typical fight between strong men and the outcome of being the third party. On Steve's side, the battle has almost come to an end. No one can fight, Steve said disdainfully. He leisurely took out the classic grilled steak and ate it, with a lonely look on his face, as the saying goes, drawing a sword and looking around at a loss. A hole was opened in the bear's chest, and electric current flashed in the mechanical body. Doflamingo escaped from the battlefield with injuries all over his body and took advantage of the chaos. Green Ox lost consciousness and fell to the side. Fujitora also lay weakly on the ground, with a trace of blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. It's over, Steve said calmly, as if this battle was just a trivial game. However, at this time, Fujitora was filled with deep doubts and uneasiness. He began to reflect on the necessity of this war, because he discovered that their battle was frantically affecting innocent Marine soldiers. These soldiers were supposed to protect the people, but now they have become victims of war. Fujitora couldn't help but think, why are we so desperate? Is it just to safeguard the so-called justice? But, is such justice really worth paying such a high price? He looked at the injured or even dead Marine soldiers around him, his heart filled with pain and self-blame. At this moment, Fujitora realized that this war might not be what he thought. At the same time, the battlefield for Tuanzi Sadako, Gengar Timo, White Bear and others was peaceful, except falling from the bottom of the sea. Garp roared, clenched his fist with his right hand, and slammed it down with endless power. The fist shone with light, like stars falling into the sea, causing a huge wave of energy. The figure of Big Wolf rushed out of the fog, with a mysterious dark aura shining on his body, and a teasing smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. You have suddenly become interesting, and I am very happy. Grey Wolf raised his left hand, and countless dark sources turned from liquid to solid, like countless spears heading straight towards Garp. Each spear contained terrifying power and seemed to be able to penetrate everything. Upon seeing this, Garp's eyes condensed, and a powerful aura erupted from his body. He waved his fists and collided with the spears, making loud noises. The two sides went back and forth, refusing to give in to each other, and the battle became increasingly fierce. Garp's fist hit Grey Wolf like a violent storm, while Grey Wolf relied on his flexible body skills and strange abilities to constantly dodge attacks and fight back against Garp. Lieutenant General Garp. This battle attracted the attention of most Marines. Everyone was paying attention to every move of the two men, expecting them to decide the winner. After all, this was one of the few exciting duels on the battlefield. 1. Fist bones cracked. Garp shouted loudly, and punched out with fierce momentum. Bang! Big Wolf quickly switched to Iron Man form, and also punched, and powerful air waves instantly spread out. The close fight allowed Grey Wolf to clearly see Garp's expression, especially the suppressed sadness in his eyes. This hidden sadness is invisible in the eyes of Big Wolf, who attaches great importance to his family. What have you lost? Big Grey Wolf frowned slightly and asked in a deep voice. I haven't lost anything. Garp attacked with all his strength, but Big Wolf retreated, jumped to the side and said solemnly, Are you family? In fact, Garp, who has been paying attention to Ace and Luffy, has already noticed the actions of Akainu and Blackbeard. But, he is fighting as a Marine at the moment and cannot leave, because he is the hero of Marine, he shoulders his own mission, and everything he does represents Marine. Perhaps because he saw something, Big Wolf did not continue to take action, but said in a calm tone. It is never the king who holds you down, but the justice behind you. At this moment, Garp stood there, with a trace of confusion and exhaustion in his eyes. He looked down at the cloak on his body that symbolized justice, and felt that it had become so heavy for the first time. Justice is really too heavy. Garp murmured to himself, with a hint of helplessness and bitterness in his voice. Chapter 164. At this point, Whitebeard died in battle. Advertise here. This was a cruel war, in which countless people lost their lives, and new victims appeared every moment. Ordinary Marines became the first victims to fall. No matter which battlefield they were on, as long as there was a slight impact, countless lives could be taken away. However, support from Marinefando is still coming in continuously, and warships and batches of Marines continue to enter the battle, seemingly endlessly. The world government is never willing to admit defeat. On this battlefield, like a meat grinder, the consciousness of ordinary people collapsed faster than imagined. Many Marines even fell into a state of madness. They no longer cared about their injured comrades, and even pointed their guns at their own comrades. Even some lieutenant generals had trouble controlling this chaotic situation. In the battlefield where Tuanzi was, Kebi was carrying Balloomba on his back, shouting crazily. Medic! Where's the medic? In every battlefield he ran to, there were horrifyingly many corpses of Marines and pirates, and some were even frozen in the ice. And as Squidward and Aokiji fight, the ice will only freeze the bodies layer by layer. Bang! Suddenly Kobe hit a wall of flesh and fell to the ground. When he looked up, he realized it was Marine who was guarding the crane. You two are Garp's apprentices, right? He frowned as he looked at Kebi, who was crying again. Commander, Kebi said with a trembling expression and gritted his teeth. Stop it. Everyone is crazy. The meaning of this war has changed. This is not justice, we are wasting lives. He paused, then looked at the battlefield at this moment. It would be an exaggeration to call it a meat grinder. We can't let things continue to develop. Crane looked worriedly at the almost half-sunk and frozen Marinevando, and she resolutely took out the phone bug. As a staff officer, the Warring States period gave her a special power, temporary takeover power. In other words, if Sengoku is unfortunately killed in battle or encounters other unexpected situations, he has the right to temporarily command and contact the Commander-in-Chief of the World Government Army, Gangji Yukong. Commander, I'm Crane. Crane was halfway through the phone call. Suddenly, the Marines guarding her beside her had expressions as if they had seen ghosts, all of them wary. It's Whitebeard. Hearing the sound, he turned his head and saw Whitebeard holding his Kong Yunchi and walking towards the center of the battlefield step by step. Marine was about to pull the bolt. As a result, he was interrupted by raising his hand. She knew that this old rival's time was running out. Newgate. You guy, finally. Crane murmured to himself as he looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar figure in front of him. Whitebeard just walked slowly towards the center of the battlefield. His tall figure attracted the attention of many Marines, but no one paid attention to him because these Marines were already killing madly on their own battlefield, and they only had their own goals in their eyes. Whitebeard walked like this, and his own life began to flash through his mind. The loneliness of childhood. Hey, my name is Rox, come to my pirate group. The captain is finished, everyone goes his own way. I want to form my own pirate group. My name is Marco, captain. You are my sons. Long time no see, Roger. Leave all your money behind. I have no interest in world domination, Shaki. Come and be my son. What a long journey. Whitebeard stopped in his tracks, his tall body seemed to carry endless fatigue and vicissitudes of life. He slowly turned the cloud cutter in his hand, and every turn seemed to carry heavy power. Suddenly, he shook hard, and the handle of the knife in his hand hit the ground with a crisp sound. Because of his central position, a strong conqueror's domineering force burst out like a raging wave, quickly spreading to the entire battlefield. This powerful aura is like a violent storm, which is irresistible. In an instant, the people in the fierce battle stopped their movements one after another, shocked by this terrifying momentum. Whitebeard, Tren, who had finished the battle at this time, held the remnant fire sword and looked solemnly at the scarred old man. Not only Tren, but also Sengoku, Garp, Steve, Tom, Li Jing, Big Wolf and many other powerful people all looked at Whitebeard. This war started by me should be over. Whitebeard's voice was low and firm, as if announcing the end of an era. There was a kind of determination and fearlessness in his eyes, as if he had already made final preparations. As soon as he finished speaking, Whitebeard suddenly charged up his left hand. This was his final blow. The muscles in his arms were tight and the veins were bulging, containing infinite strength. At the same time, the entire Marinavando battlefield began to tremble violently, the ice surface cracked, the seawater rolled, dark clouds rolled in the sky, and there was lightning and thunder. Whether it's Jenny Tren or Shanks, or Marshall D. Teach, Whitebeard sneered, a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. The stage of the new era will be yours, but before I fall. In this era, it's still called Whitebeard. With Whitebeard's roar, he exuded endless coercion, as if the whole world was enveloped by his aura. A terrifying energy burst out, sweeping across the entire battlefield like a tsunami. This energy wave carries unparalleled power and envelopes all enemies and friendly forces. Whether they are Marines or pirates, they all feel the terror of this power. Those who tried to resist were blown away one after another, and some were even killed directly. And those who wanted to escape could not escape the pursuit of this force and were mercilessly devoured. The entire Malinbando fell into chaos. Buildings collapsed, the sea rolled, and the smell of a world collapsing made everyone flee in fear. But this is just the beginning, the terrifying force is still spreading. Bedrock wall. Steve reacted immediately, and he quickly used bedrock to protect the Black Pearl. At the same time, other members also returned to the ship, preparing to deal with whatever might happen next. Of course, not everyone returned to the ship. Whitebeard. Thor looked at the old man in the distance with a calm expression on his face. Although the surrounding environment had become chaotic, she did not seem to be greatly affected. Thor, who then witnessed everything, said softly, although I don't know what a treasure is, you should have found your own One Piece. This is the guy who should dance. Tom saw cracks in his Susanoo, but still laughed excitedly. For him, fighting with such people is truly worth looking forward to. Is it over? Li Jing waved the sword in his hand and easily blocked the surrounding attacks. Those attacks seemed like nothing in front of him. Family always comes first. Big Wolf sighed. The era is over. Tren took a deep breath and instantly entered the remnant fire sword, Vulcan state, using this solution to defend with all his strength. Whitebeard's last blow before his death, using powerful power, stopped the entire battlefield with one blow, and the entire Malinbando completely collapsed. At the same time, Edward Newgate, the captain of the Whitebeard pirates who was so powerful in the New World and one of the 4 emperors, stood quietly in the center of the battlefield. He is known as the strongest man in the world, and is also known as the man with the power to destroy the world. The Kong Yunchi, one of the 12 skills of the Supreme Sharp Sword, was trembling and screaming at this time. I don't know if it was due to the force of the shock. However, at this moment, Whitebeard looked extremely calm, standing there as calmly as a majestic mountain. Everyone felt the powerful aura exuding from Whitebeard, but everyone knew that he left. At this point, Whitebeard died in battle. Chapter 165 The End of the War on the Top. Advertise here. Whitebeard's earth-shattering blow caused everyone to stop what they were doing and stare blankly at the scene in front of them. The entire battlefield fell into a dead silence, with only the sound of waves lapping against the hull. Whitebeard L's power before his death was so powerful that his existence shocked people. With the death of Whitebeard, this war on the top also came to an end. The war on the top begins with Whitebeard's arrival and ends with Whitebeard's departure. This war was a disaster for the Whitebeard pirates. All 45 New World pirates were destroyed, and half of the 14 captains died. The fall of the world's strongest man is a pity, and the departure of Fire Fist Ace is even more heartbreaking. Since then, the Whitebeard Pirates, one of the 4 emperors, has completely disappeared. In order to protect the bodies of Whitebeard and Ace, the remaining Marco and others decided to leave the battlefield. However, they were attacked by Blackbeard Teach on the way. As a team composed of half of Impel Down's criminals, the Prison Break team also suffered huge losses. During the Battle of the Top, almost half of the members were killed, and Luffy and Jinbei followed Law's route and left the battlefield. On the other hand, when Whitebeard launched the final attack, Buggy and the other half were hiding on a warship. They were lucky enough to escape the attack, but were thrown away by the mountain god like Dumpling. However, surprisingly, they survived safely. This experience allowed Buggy to gain a huge pirate base and become a highly watched figure. At the same time, former One Piece Vice Captain Pluton Rayleigh and red-haired Shanks were killed by Jenny Thrun. Ben Beckman, the vice captain of the red-haired pirates and Shanks' right hand, was disabled by Thor and was subsequently imprisoned by Marine in the 6th floor prison of Impel Down. The sniper of the red-haired pirates, Jesus, was poisoned and died in the hands of Timo. Timo became famous for a while. The chef of the red-haired pirate group, Lucky Lou, had his hands cut off by a white bear, and was then imprisoned by Marine in the 6th floor prison of Impel Down City. At the same time, Tom and Jerry also became famous for killing the evil King of Aro, Moonhunter Katrine, and the red-haired pirates Bendik, Bank Punch and Warrior, and defeated Marine Fleet Admiral in a battle. The name of Tren Adventure Group's Red Flower Double Sticks is resounding all over the world. In addition, Roaring Gabu and Lime Jones of the red-haired pirates fought against SpongeBob with Marine General Kizaru, but were defeated later. Then he was pushed into the 6th floor prison of Shangcheng City by Huang Yuanguan, who was in good condition. Huang Yuan's performance was even better. At this point, except for the disappearance of the ship's Dr. Hongo, this red-haired Shanks, one of the 4 emperors, who also ruled in the New World, in the second half of the Grand Line, was founded. Deeply trusted by his subordinates, all of his cadres are famous, and the average bounty within the group is very high, making them known as the most balanced Iron Wall Pirates group. The red-haired pirates, all destroyed. Of course, there are also pet dumplings, killing San Juan, the evil wolf, and 3 giant lieutenants. Shipwright Steve, one man fighting 2 generals, double Shichibukai. There are also Big Wolf defeating the hero Garp, Li Jing defeating Eagle Eye, and so on. The end of the war on the top marked the end of an era. The destruction of the Whitebeard pirates and the departure of many powerful men brought a huge impact to the entire Great Pirate era. With the fall of the Whitebeard era, a new era and a new year have officially arrived. New World. The news of the defeat of the 4 Emperors pirate groups in the first half of the Grand Line spread quickly throughout the world like a strong wind. Because the live broadcast that was supposed to end was suddenly interrupted, people everywhere were full of curiosity and expectations for the outcome of this battle. However, when they opened the newspaper with joy, those shocking headlines and contents made everyone feel fear. 2 emperors fall, 1 emperor is born, Marinfando is completely sunk, Whitebeard dies in battle. Fire Fist Ace dies, Pluton Rayleigh dies in battle, red-haired Shanks dies in battle. The red-haired pirates end. Summary of Marine's successes and failures, Marine's recruitment. Every word in these titles is like a sharp sword, piercing the reader's heart. Except for some political remarks about Marine, the other titles all represent the departure of a strong man of the times. And in all the titles, a key figure is mentioned: Tren Adventure Group. Sabayati Island Archipelago, the sun shines on the flat shore lawn, warm and peaceful. In Shaki's rip-off bar, the sound of music and people's chatter and laughter intertwine to form a unique atmosphere. However, compared with the lively environment, Shaki seems extremely quiet. She sat quietly on the chair in front of the bar, staring intently at the wine glass in her hand, with half a glass of wine left in it. Her fingers gently touched the rim of the glass, as if feeling the temperature of the glass. In front of her eyes, there was a copy of today's newspaper, and the headlines attracted her attention. Rayleigh, Shaki whispered softly, with a hint of sadness in his voice. She held a thin cigarette in her left hand, and the smoke curled up and filled the air. She bit her lip slightly, tears flashing in her eyes, as if she was trying to suppress the emotional fluctuations in her heart. You bastard, didn't you say you were going to gamble? Wangguo, Cake Island. BGIMOM should have continued the joyful dessert party today, but at this time she was not in any mood to eat her favorite desserts. It was expected that the old guy Whitebeard would die, but Shanks' Auntie's face was gloomy, obviously compared to the defeat of the Whitebeard pirates. The destruction of the red-haired pirates is even more shocking. The sea is really stormy. An island on the Grand Line. Thief, ha 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 ha. Blackbeard Teach sat on a rock, reading the newspaper and letting out a harsh laugh. There were only 3 people left beside him. They were all members of the Blackbeard pirates, but they all looked a little embarrassed at this time. Van Oka, who was almost shot through the heart, relied on his special skills to survive the drunkard and Shiryu of the rain. Fanoka said to Blackbeard angrily, "Captain, what should we do now?" His injuries had obviously not fully recovered, and his face was as pale as paper. "What should I do?" Blackbeard stopped laughing, and a cunning light flashed in his eyes. He stretched out his left hand and activated the power of the dark fruit, and at the same time stretched out his right hand to activate the ability of the shaking fruit. Of course, it's the beginning of my era. Ha ha ha. Following his words, a powerful breath burst out from him, and the surrounding air seemed to tremble. Chapter 166 Marines' New Policy. Advertise here. At the end of the war, the huge fortress of Marines' headquarters, Marinefando, sank to the bottom of the sea, and the waves swallowed up this once land of justice. Among the remaining bricks and tiles, the dust of history slowly settles, while the new era calls for reform and revival. Holy Land Marie Joya. Before the iron-blooded heat has retreated, the world government urgently convened a meeting of extraordinary significance. The commander-in-chief of the World Government Army, Gangji Yukong, shouldered the heavy responsibility and presided over the meeting. Marie Joya, temporary Marine base, conference room. At this time, the atmosphere in the conference room was solemn. All the participants were the backbone of Marine. A tall man with a white mohawk, a commander-in-chief's cape, and a red short-sleeved shirt was sitting quietly in the conference room. Position. He is the commander-in-chief of the World Government Army, Cyborg Sora. To the left of Cyborg Sora, Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku looked ahead with a frown. Sitting on the right side are Marine Generals Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru, Green Bull, and Fujitora. The 5 generals are sitting next to each other by their names, and almost all of them are covered with white bandages. The lieutenant generals of the headquarters and the hero Garp Ikuru are also present, but if there is no other such as standing in line or voting, the lieutenant general of the headquarters will not speak easily. Bang! Cyborg Kong suddenly slapped the table with his palm, looked at the Marines with blazing eyes, and said in a sonorous voice, "Look at yourselves, do you still have a righteous Marine? She is simply old, weak, sick, crippled." Hearing this, Green Bull snorted coldly and retorted, "Then the world government did not send other combat forces to support it at that time." Huang Mu. Warring states shouted. The world government didn't expect things to develop like this. Cyborg Kong looked at the injuries on Fleet Admiral Sengoku he had trained, but he still felt soft. After all, he was also a Marine. But what's important now is, what should Marine do next? This is also the main purpose of this meeting. As Cyborg Kong finished his speech, Warring States Fleet Admiral was the first to express his opinion. His voice was low and serious. In the war, our Marines generally won a miserable victory, which can even be said to be terrible. The entire Marineland was almost reduced to rubble, and countless soldiers and civilians were killed. Even the specific casualties of Marine have not yet been calculated. Hearing this, everyone fell silent, lowered their heads and sighed, with a trace of sadness and helplessness in their eyes. After all, on the battlefield, the lives of ordinary people are as small and fleeting as ants. But, Sengoku Fleet Admiral's tone suddenly became firm, "We also won. 4 Emperors Whitebeard and Shanks were annihilated. Especially the red-haired pirates, they are very difficult guys. Although they paid a heavy price, but because of this, there is now a vacuum among the pirates in the New World due to the defeat of the 4 Emperors. As for Tren and his group, there is no news yet that they have taken over the territory of these 4 Emperors' forces." Quote. Having said this, Sengoku stood up and endured the pain of pulling the wound and shouted, "We should take this opportunity to bring justice to the New World where Marine currently has the least control." After Sengoku finished speaking, Akainu spoke next, his eyes flashing with determination. "Chaos and order need to be ruled with an iron hand. We will baptize justice and let those lawless pirates understand that the sanctions of justice are unavoidable and there is no paradise for pirates." Kizaru adjusted his glasses slightly, and his relaxed tone was in sharp contrast to the tense atmosphere of the meeting. "Oh, isn't this going to be another fight?" Pelusalino, as the only person in the audience who only has a bandage on his finger, "Are you sure you want to finish?" Cyborg Kong smiled slightly. Looking at Cyborg Sora's smile, Kizaru's expression suddenly dropped and he said seriously, "Yes, those damn pirates, justice will not let them go. As Marine General, I will take the lead in attacking." At this time, Aokiji's cold voice came through, "But what if we run into Tren and his gang? Although they said they did not take over these sites, they did not listen to our objection." Quote. Green Bull and Fujitora participated in such a high-level meeting for the first time. Green Bull sighed. "This is not easy. Laozi was almost killed by that square man." Fujitora still had the same eyes-closed expression. "I don't want to lie. If you want to defeat those guys, you need a top-level war that is completely targeted at them." Garp tapped on the table, his eyes dull, he had not yet gotten over his sadness. "We won't meet them. I have investigated the situation of the Telen Adventure Group from its fame to the present. It seems that they only like to stay on their own ship and have no so-called territory desire." He spoke slowly, his voice calm and firm. "As a senior staff officer, she needs to put forward appropriate opinions. This is a perfect opportunity." She glanced at everyone present and continued, "In the past, we had a strong dominance in the first half of the Grand Route, but in the second half of the New World, we had no control at all, making New World a paradise for pirates. Now, taking advantage of this opportunity, we should move forward and change this situation. Times have changed, and we can no longer stick to the old rules." At this point, Crane's eyes became sharp, as if they could penetrate all obstacles. She continued. So, I propose to establish the new Marine headquarters in New World. In this way, we can better control the situation and form a more powerful deterrent to pirates. At the same time, we can also show the world the determination and strength of our Marine, and let those who dare to challenge justice know that we are not easy to mess with. People can't help but feel moved by his words. At this moment, everyone seemed to see a brand new future, a new era led by Marine. Is it set up in the New World? Cyborg Kong was a little moved. This was a message to let the world believe in Marine, especially now that the war is over and there is too much pressure from public opinion. Then where should we set up? Warring States said flatly. His voice was like a pebble on a calm lake, stirring up thousands of waves. Everyone expressed their opinions one after another, and the conference room was filled with heated discussions. Some people have suggested building a new headquarters near the entrance to the Grand Line, so that pirates entering and exiting the Grand Line can be better controlled. Some people also suggested setting up a stronghold near the Four Emperors' territory so that they can attack them at any time. In short, it is a debate between hawks and doves. Various plans have been proposed, but there are certain risks and difficulties. At this moment, Cyborg Kong slapped the table and said loudly, with the largest G2 base in New World as the center. After the meeting, Marine senior executives returned to their posts to prepare for the relocation and new strategic layout. Cyborg Kong even released a series of important documents, such as, Marine will respond to the challenges of the New World with a more flexible and tough attitude, on the protracted war of pirates, small island surrounding forces, etc. These documents detailed it explains Marine's future strategic direction and course of action. Under the new orders, Marine soldiers moved supplies and redeployed forces in an orderly manner. Their busy figures shine in the sun, as if indicating that Marine is about to usher in new glory. The original Malinfando looked particularly desolate under the sunset. This island that had witnessed countless battles was now in ruins. But it also symbolizes the end of an old era and the beginning of a new era for Marine. Chapter 167 Famous Teacher Online. Advertise here. In the waters of New World, the Black Pearl is like a calm beast, driving slowly on a fixed route. The sea breeze blew the sails gently, making a slight rustling sound. However, the atmosphere on the ship seemed particularly peaceful, as if the war on top that shocked the world not long ago was nothing more than a trivial farce. Do you really want to go? Thor. Tren looked at Thor's hand on his shoulder, swallowed hard, and felt a little uneasy in his heart. Of course I want to go. Why not? I'm a little curious. The corners of Thor's mouth raised slightly, revealing a faint smile. She held a familiar invitation letter in her hand and handed it to Sadako beside her without hesitation. That's right, Big Mom is going crazy again. They rejected the invitation last time. Unexpectedly, she sent someone to deliver the invitation letter again this time, and she still used the same method, having the messenger deliver the letter 800 miles away. Throw it on their boat. It says that Big Mom's 22nd daughter Charlotte Chiffon is about to marry Capone Becky, one of the evil supernovas, so we are specially invited to attend the wedding. Sadako's ethereal voice echoed in Terran's ears, bringing with it a touch of mystery and weirdness. So are we going? Leader. Xiaohei sat on the table, eating honey cake with big mouthfuls, and even waving his fingers and shaking them. If you have nothing to do, just go and take a look. Anyway, we are so peaceful now. Before Tren could finish his words, there was a burst of rapid footsteps and a sound of, ooh, ooh. Coming from the cabin. Sound. Void. Suddenly Jerry rushed out and squatted behind the door. Then the moment Tom leaned forward, he closed the door with force. Bang. Tom turned into a cat, but shook his head and returned to normal. Then he looked straight at Jerry with a fierce expression. A little. Jerry stuck out his tongue with a mocking look on his face, and then immediately turned to the table where the three of them were sitting, with Tom following closely behind. Ping 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 pong. The two of them ran around, and all the plates or cups on the table fell down, but luckily there were ninjas from the Shadow Legion who reached out and caught them all. We are indeed a bit lackluster. Thor suppressed a chuckle, and then walked towards the second-floor restaurant with a plate, where she was going to get some freshly cut fruit. These two guys will return to their true nature as soon as they take off their clothes, right? Tren rubbed his eyebrows. He only recently discovered that as long as they are fine on the Black Pearl, Uchiha Tom and Senju Jerry will strip their red armors clean. Immediately afterwards, the naked two people returned to the days of having sex. Business is the symbol of everyone being together. Sadako smiled, then floated behind Tren and rested her head on his shoulder, as if remembering the days when she first came here. At this time, Jerry suddenly got to the observation deck where Timo and Gengar were, but this time Tom was faster and grabbed Jerry with one hand. I said you too. Timo looked at these two guys with a look of helplessness. However, Tom stretched out his index finger and shook it, then took out 2 slices of bread from Timo's snack bag, sandwiched Jerry between them, and took out mayonnaise from somewhere. Wow, looking at this smooth operation, Timo opened his mouth. However, just when Tom was about to bite, Jerry took out the poison tag from Timo at some point. No, this can't be used. Timo was about to say something, but Jerry had already pricked Tom's hand, followed by another squealing, and then the colorful Tom was resurrected without full health for 3 seconds. And continued to chase Jerry. The whole Black Pearl was running around. SpongeBob SquarePants and Patrick Star in the fishing competition looked at the fish hooks thrown into each other's faces because of Tom and Jerry, and smiled. Immediately afterwards, the two of them used force at the same time and threw each other out of the sea. On the other side, Squidward was woken up by a kick while basking in the sun. You two. You are really more annoying than SpongeBob and Patrick. In the Big Wolf laboratory, the two people turned into cubes and walked out slowly. I have just adjusted this. In the kitchen, White Bear looked at Tom, who was being crushed into caffles by the caffle machine, and fell into deep thought. In Steve's craftsman's room, Steve was quietly drawing pictures, while Tom, with a wicked smile on his face, pressed the mechanical buttons frantically, and Jerry banged under countless heavy hammers. So energetic. Li Jing blew lightly into the teacup, but his clothes were ripped away by Tom. It's strange. I'm obviously blowing tea. Why does my whole body feel cold? Li Jing frowned and then shivered. No, my clothes. The rituals and music are broken. You two stop. Just when the Black Pearl was enjoying its daily life, the Amazon lily of the Grand Line was on an island not far away. At this time, Luffy was like a walking corpse. No matter how Jinbei tried to persuade him, it was of no use. Especially when Luffy learned that the Shanks One Piece group was destroyed, the last trace of spiritual comfort was also taken away. Ace. Shanks, what's the use of me? I'm so weak, even though everything is right in front of me, but I can't do anything about it. Luffy muttered to himself as he stared at the stone in front of him. That's why you have to become stronger. Didn't you lose everything, Luffy? Jinbei shouted. Haha. Luffy sneered and did not answer. Jinbei has said this sentence many times. Now there is no fluctuation in his heart, just like a pool of stagnant water without any waves. Luffy. Suddenly a familiar voice came, and Luffy's pale pupils flashed with light. Jinbei on the side also opened his mouth wide. Aren't you dead? Is there any difference between me and death? Shanks walked out on crutches with the help of Hongo. At this time, Shanks was still wearing a black coat, a white shirt, and two knives, Ace and Griffin, at his waist, but his spirit was decadent and he did not look as high-spirited as before. In the past, he only lost his left arm, but now his left leg has been cut off, and the sword hand has become a support for a cane. There are still shocking scars on his chest. This shows that even with Rayleigh in the way, Shanks still almost lost his life. Die. Shanks. Shanks. Luffy looked at Shanks, his eyes filled with joy and sorrow. Glad Shanks is still alive. The sadness was that he couldn't believe that the once powerful and confident man in front of him had become so depressed. Shanks. How could you do this? Luffy muttered to himself, tears flowing down unconsciously. Shanks smiled bitterly and shook his head. Luffy, I am no longer the Four Emperors Shanks. I am just a useless person now. Luffy gritted his teeth and felt a strong determination in his heart. No, Shanks, you will not be a useless person. If we become stronger together, we will definitely be able to restore our past glory. Shanks looked at Luffy's firm eyes and felt a little relieved in his heart. Luffy, my time has passed. I can't compete with you for One Piece. Luffy clenched his fists. No, Shanks, your time has not passed yet. As long as you are willing, we can start over together. Hongo. Shanks called softly, with a hint of exhaustion and sadness in his voice. He sat there quietly, looking into the distance with empty eyes. Hongo suppressed the grief in his heart, silently walked to Shanks, and lit a cigarette for him with trembling hands. Shanks took a deep drag on his cigarette, and as the smoke filled his face, a touch of sadness appeared on his face. Luffy, what you said is right, but I have lost everything. Shanks slowly exhaled the smoke, as if he wanted to exhale the pain in his heart. But you don't. You still have a future and you can start over. Shanks' voice was low and hoarse, carrying endless vicissitudes and helplessness, but when his eyes fell on Luffy, there was a hint of tenderness. Shanks. Luffy's eyes widened and he was stunned. He didn't expect Shanks to say this, and didn't know how to respond for a while. Shanks looked at Luffy, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a bitter smile. I will teach you to become stronger and teach you everything. Shanks' tone was so calm that it made people feel scared. Because, this is the only thing I can do. His voice gradually became lower, as if he was talking to himself. Chapter 168 Energetic Tom and Jerry. Advertise here. Boom, boom, boob, boom. A special phone bug rang, and then on a merchant ship on the sea, a man with a mustache and a tall hat held it in the palm of his hand. Tomato. This is the codename Potato. Please answer when you receive it. Potato. This is a tomato. I have received it. The phone bug opened his mouth. Tren and his gang received an invitation from the Four Emperors BIGMOM pirates and are now on their way to all nations. But at this time they stopped in the waters off Carlos Island. The purpose was unknown, and there was a suspected crew conflict. Quote. Crew conflict. The phone bug's expression instantly became exaggerated. No. That's right, they don't attack merchant ships, so I watched this scene with my own eyes. The CP organization, codenamed To Do, frowned slightly as he looked at the scene in front of him. On the deck of the Black Pearl, Tom and Jerry were tied up. 3 days, do you know how I spent these 3 days? Brother Squidward was the first to speak. My lunch break is gone, my sunbathing is gone, my flute is gone. There is also my collector's tea set. Li Jing squatted in front of a pile of debris, and his life was only black and white. And last night's dinner, they were all restless. Bai Shang folded his arms and shook his head, especially thinking of the scene at the dinner table yesterday. Fortunately, my plants. Before Sadako could finish her words, Tom saw a smile on his face and carefully pushed a bunch of plants in front of Sadako, piled a pile of soil, and patted her with his little hands. Take a shot. Sadako. You too. Tren was about to say something, but Tom and Jerry blinked Kazilan's big eyes and flew out of the little star. I think they have nothing to do with their strength. When their strength is used up, they will probably settle down. Big Wolf said. That's right. Steve nodded. After all, in the days after the war ended, Tom and Jerry were completely in their honeymoon period. Listen to what you two said. Tron looked at Tom and Jerry without clothes and seemed to understand something, so he walked to their room, which was actually a nest. And he took out the red armor that the two of them had taken off. Bang! In the originally calm sea, two waves of pressure suddenly spread, and the sea surface began to fluctuate. Is there a fight? Tren and his gang are actually fighting among themselves. This is big news. CP, codenamed To Do, looked at the scene in front of him and murmured excitedly, while still frantically delivering the news. Boom. Bang. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from the Black Pearl and flew towards Ikaro's island. Immediately afterwards, another figure rose from the Black Pearl. Although it was just a cat, its expression was full of contempt and arrogance. It held a fan in one hand and a sickle in the other, and shouted wildly, Jerry. Take Carlos Island. Senju. Jerry walks out from the big hands of cousin Wooden Golem. Tom, I really don't want to fight you, this is not good at all. Huh, do you mean, I will lose? Tom Uchiha shouted loudly, and then rushed into the island. Fire style. Fire extinguishes. Sage art. Wood style. Big cousin. Jerry clasped his hands together, followed by a big cousin Wooden Golem, raised his palms to block the flames. For a moment, they each performed their unique ninjutsu, and for a moment, fire burst out and smoke filled the air. Sage art. Wood style. The tree realm is coming. Jerry kept avoiding Tom's attacks while using wood style to create various defenses. And Tom relied on his pupil's insight and powerful physical skills to break through Jerry's defense again and again. Wooden dragon technique. Jerry shouted, and then a wooden dragon rushed out. Bang. Tom summoned Susano's ribs to wrap around his body, easily defending against the attack. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a confident smile. Immediately afterwards, Tom formed a seal with his hands again, spitting out 4 fire dragons toward the ground, attacking the target simultaneously from up, down, left, and right directions. Fire style. The art of dragon flame singing. At the same time, he flashed his body and attacked Jerry like lightning. Jerry looked at the scene in front of him and couldn't help being shocked. But he did not panic, but reacted quickly forming seals with his hands, and murmuring, Wood style Big Cousin Asylum. As he finished speaking, a huge wooden hand rose from the ground, blocking him and Tom. However, this wooden hand did not completely block Tom's attack. Seeing this, Jerry quickly used his skills to avoid the attack of Tom's sickle. The figures of the two people were like ghosts, flying through the air, dazzling people. And Tom is chasing after him, constantly releasing various ninjutsu, trying to hit Jerry. The two of them were going back and forth, and it was hard to tell the winner for a while. The entire battlefield was filled with a tense atmosphere, as if a fierce battle could break out at any time. Jerry, this little fight is boring. Tom laughed, and then released his eye power, directly using Susano's true form. Suddenly, a giant whose size exceeded the mountain peak appeared, taking on the posture of a god of war. The armor on his back had transformed wings and was equipped with 2 swords. Is this still going to happen? Tom, Jerry, this is fate. Forget it, I'll give you 2 hands this time. Jerry sighed, then clasped his hands together. Sage art wood style Shinju Senju. Tren looked at the battlefield in the distance, his eyes fixed on Shuzai, who was suppressed by Senju's eldest cousin, and he thought to himself, they should be almost done fighting. At this time, Thor brought a glass of juice and gently placed it in front of Tren. Tren took the cup and took a sip, feeling the coolness and sweetness of the juice. Is it apple juice today? It tastes good. The platelets on the side excitedly waved their flags and shouted loudly, go ahead. Come on. Their faces were filled with excitement, and they seemed to be more committed to this battle than anyone else. Xiaohei sat quietly on the table, watching everything in front of him with a smile. His eyes revealed a kind of calmness and confidence, as if he had a clear grasp of the situation. I've bought it and let it go. Tom will pay 3 for 1, and Jerry will pay 4 for 1. Timo, Gengar, Li Jing and Steve also gathered together to form a small circle, observing the battle situation and discussing in low voices. At the same time, on the other side, on the merchant ship that had withdrawn some distance away, the CP member codenamed To Do was full of excitement and shouted at the phone bug. I lied to you, mother. There is definitely internal strife, and they all beat me to death. I swear this with my whole career. His voice was full of excitement and determination, as if he had witnessed a fierce internal fight with his own eyes. Chapter 169 Marine. It's stable, it's stable. Advertise here. The night was like ink, and the stars were hidden behind thick clouds. The lights in the intelligence room of the CP organization were dim, and there were only the sounds of typing on keyboards, printing intelligence documents, and the sounds of nervous breathing. The CP intelligence officer, codenamed Tomato, frowned and stared at the phone bug in his hand. I saw his eyes widening instantly with his ordinary hair, especially when to do swore. He realized that this was an extremely important piece of information. There were serious divisions and internal strife within Tren's group. This news must be reported immediately. And it is level 1. Without any hesitation, the CP member codenamed Tomato quickly encrypted the information and printed it into a file, then transferred it to another responsible department. However, the information about pirates such as the 4 emperors and others within the CP organization should not have to be passed on to the 5 elders first. But since the war, the intelligence of Tren and his gang has been designated as First Red Level. That is to say, the highest rights holder of the world government has to read it completely before passing it on. Finally, we get to Marine Fleet Admiral. Marie Joya, Marine Temporary Base. We have important information. Make way. A Marine intelligence officer quickly ran across the aisle. Why was it the aisle? Because except for the conference room where the last meeting was held, the so-called Marine Temporary Base in Marigio is an office of 50 square meters, with just a table and a chair. In the spacious office, the lights seemed a little dim, giving people a dull feeling. Warring States sat alone at his desk, his figure outlined by the light, looking lonely and determined. His brows were furrowed tightly, and he held a red and blue pencil in his hand and kept scratching back and forth on the document. At this moment, his hair has begun to turn white, and the traces of time have quietly climbed up his forehead and the corners of his eyes. Time passed by minute, and Warring States was focused on his work, constantly signing documents one after another. After he signed a few documents again, Warring States stretched out his hand habitually, preparing to take out some snacks from the drawer to feed the pet and relax himself. However, when he opened the drawer, he suddenly remembered something. Because the office was too small, his beloved pet sheep could not stay here. Even my pet sheep can't stay here. My fleet admiral is really alive. Just as he was sighing, a sudden knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. He raised his head and looked sharply at the door. Come in. Warring States' voice was calm and powerful, revealing a sense of majesty. Fleet Admiral, First Level Intelligence. Please read. The door slowly opened, and a nervous and anxious Marine walked in with documents. First Level Intelligence. What happened again? Warring States looked at the documents in the hands of the intelligence officer and muttered to himself. After quickly and deftly opening the file, the report on the internal strife among Tren's group was displayed in front of him. Are those 2 guys who only showed their faces during the battle at the top and fought against me? Looking at the intelligence content, Seng Guo's face didn't show much change in expression, but his heart was in turmoil. Finally, I knew it. How could a pirate group of this level not have internal strife? A group of powerful guys gathered together are a complete collection of contradictions. How could such a pirate group avoid internal strife? Jenny Tren, your road is still narrow. The more I think about the Warring States period, the better I feel, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Maybe I can weaken the power of Tren and his gang in one fell swoop, or even destroy them directly. However, this still needs a chance to intensify the fire. After saying that, Warring States picked up the phone and issued the order in a deep voice. I need to make some adjustments before I send out the wanted order that was just issued. After hanging up the phone, Warring States' eyes flashed with the light of a successful plot. Now that they are fighting so fiercely, it shows that the relationship is no longer good. Even if there is reconciliation, there will be gaps. At this time, the 2 wanted orders were combined into one, which made the pirates who were concerned about the bounty. The night is gradually getting darker, the lights of the Marigio Marine Temporary Base are still bright, and Sengoku's figure casts a long silhouette on the office window. Stable. Not only Sengoku has this idea, but also the 5 elders. In a spacious and gorgeously decorated hall, there are luxurious sofas and stools. This is the favorite meeting place of the 5 elders. At this moment, an intelligence document is placed on the table. This is an opportunity that we can't give up. Saint Saturn of Garcia, who was wearing a black suit, white curly hair, a fluffy white beard, a flat hat, and a scar on the left side of his face, raised his eyes calmly. Road. Ambitious guys can never live in peace. Rox has proved it. This Jenny Tren, haha. Marcus Mars Saint Mars, who has long white straight hair and a long beard, walked. He arrived at the table, picked up the document, and sneered. Tom and Jerry, these 2 fur tribes, we have to choose one. The bald man with a splayed beard and a Madara birthmark on his forehead looked at the 4 people, then continued to speak. It just so happens that Moonlight Mariah is no longer qualified to serve as Shichibukai. I have ordered Doflamingo to kill Mariah and claim that Mariah died in the line of duty. Hearing this sentence, Peter St. Jupiter, who had no tie, blonde hair, golden beard, and a scar on his chest, frowned. If we can rely on this thing to instigate the 2 of them, for anyone, this is a good thing. But, let's let people from the CP organization get in touch now, okay? Quote. What's wrong? Zambalong v. Nasho Langsheng Venus, who always wears a white Taoist uniform, pushed his eyes, stopped wiping the knife, and looked at Peter 10 Peter Holy. At this time, it will get better and better, and it will be difficult to grasp it later. Also, if it succeeds, Shichibukai is not suitable. He should be allowed to join CP0 and serve the Tianlong people. Then which one should we choose? Marcus Mars Saint Mars said, his eyes swept across the photos in front of him, and finally landed on a blue cat named Tom. Who should I choose? Judging from the photos, I think this blue fur cat named Tom will be easier to get along with. Saint Garcia Saturn pointed at Tom's photo and said, with a hint of expectation in his eyes. As that's so. Pullman Warball Saint Mercury touched his chin and fell into deep thought. He carefully observed the photos of Tom and Jerry. Let's decide like this. Anyway, everyone has no objections. It doesn't matter whoever chooses. Anyway, we will let the people from the CP organization find opportunities to get in touch. Marcus Mars Saint Mars decided, his tone firm and decisive. Everyone nodded and agreed with this decision. They knew that this action must be cautious and there should be no mistakes. But once successful, this will be the beginning of the collapse of the Tren Adventure Group and an important step towards victory. Just like the Valley of the Gods back then, didn't the powerful rocks also fall due to the betrayal of the three parties in the crew? Chapter 170 List. Advertise here. Just when the world government was excited about the intelligence, far away on another isolated island, Krikana Island, a man covered in bandages was kneeling on one knee, looking firmly at the person in front of him. This person is Zoro, and what he faces is Mihawk, who is known as the world's greatest swordsman. Please teach me swordsmanship. Zoro's voice was full of desire and determination, as if this was the entire meaning of his life. However, Hawkeye did not agree to him immediately. Instead, he frowned slightly, stared at Zoro kneeling on the ground, and said slowly, "You were knocked down by the baboon and could not go to sea." But before Hawkeye could finish his words, Zoro couldn't wait to interrupt him. "Baboon, I have defeated him. From now on, all that's left is your head." His tone was firm, with an unyielding light shining in his eyes. Hearing this sentence, a trace of surprise flashed in Hawkeye's eyes. Unexpectedly, this guy who had been defeated by him stood up again so quickly and showed such a strong fighting spirit. Hawkeye raised the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a faint smile. "It seems you still have some ability. However, since you regard me as your enemy, why do you ask for my guidance so humbly? What makes you give up your own dignity?" Quote. Zoro's eyes widened and he replied without hesitation, "Partner." His voice was full of determination and persistence. "And isn't that the same for you?" Zoro asked, his eyes as sharp as a sword, staring straight at Hawkeye, as if he wanted to see through his appearance and see deep into his heart. "Me." Hawkeye raised the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a meaningful smile. I saw Eagle Eye gently picking up the red wine glass in front of him, shaking it gracefully, letting the wine swirl in the glass, and then took a sip, feeling the mellow taste of the wine. "How could I do this?" His voice was low and magnetic, with a hint of ridicule. However, Zoro was not fooled by Hawkeye's answer. He directly took out a newspaper reporting on the war in Japan, unfolded it, pointed to a picture on it and said, "I saw it. In this picture, the scene of Whitebeard dying in battle is shocking, and a man in the lower left corner is kneeling in front of Li Jing with a defiant look on his face. This man is Eagle Eye." PFF'd. When Hawkeye saw this scene, he couldn't help but spit out the red wine in his mouth. His cold image was instantly shattered, with a look of shock and embarrassment on his face. Although the picture is not particularly clear, both the dress and the posture are. Zoro thought that Hawkeye didn't believe it, and was about to continue explaining, but was interrupted by a sharp sword light. I saw Hawkeye waving the sword in his hand, the light of the sword flashed past, and the newspaper instantly shattered into countless pieces. How could it be me? Hawkeye cleared his throat, trying to regain his calmness and confidence, with a firm light in his eyes, as if to wipe away the embarrassment just now. "Then you." Zoro raised his eyes and looked at Hawkeye doubtfully. "Ha ha ha, it seems you have found something that is better than ambition." Eagle Eye suddenly laughed, and there was a kind of relief and emotion in the laughter. He took a deep look at Zoro, then raised his glass and took a sip of red wine, savoring the mellow aroma in the wine. "Let's talk about cultivation after you recover from your injuries." Eagle Eye put down his wine glass and his tone became serious. "Ah, really? No problem." Zoro's face was filled with joy, and his heart was filled with anticipation and excitement. After all, training with a top swordsman like Hawkeye will greatly improve your swordsmanship. However, just when he was happy, he saw Hawkeye taking out the dagger that had caused him so much pain. "Before that, I need to try your strength again," Hawkeye said with a smile, but there was an unpredictable meaning hidden behind that smile. Zoro's face turned gloomy instantly. "Don't you just want to get that completely suppressed feeling back in me? Bastard." Hawkeye ignored Zoro's roar and simply responded, "Shut up, this is part of the practice. Then I will completely catch your defense, you only need to attack with all your strength." Zoro. Back to the Black Pearl. Facts have proven that sometimes having too much physical strength can cause some trouble. At this moment, Tom and Jerry on the Black Pearl are in the sweet honeymoon period, and even a steak has to be divided into two portions to enjoy. "I really don't know how long this state can last." Taren sighed helplessly. "If you can enjoy a day of leisure, it's a day. Li Jing happily walked out of Steve's craftsman's room, holding a brand new tea set in his hand. Yes. Tren nodded in agreement, then stretched his body and opened the system interface lightly. After all, the last war was fruitful and a lot of spiritual and emotional values were accumulated. 275% summon, 50% Shanks, 25% Garp, 25% Luffy, 40% Sengoku, 45% Whitebeard. When he saw that the summoning progress bar had reached an astonishing 275%, Tren couldn't help but widen his eyes and swallowed. 275%. He couldn't believe his eyes, this number was really amazing. However, the shock was followed by endless joy. I saw someone as excited as a gambler, rubbing his hands constantly, with a greedy light in his eyes. Just a little more, and it will break through 300%. No way, he murmured to himself, filled with excitement, expectations. At this moment, Tren was in a dilemma. On the one hand, he desires to extract immediately and enjoy the instant stimulation. On the other hand, he wanted to accumulate more summons to get greater surprises. Whether it's a temporary pleasure or a special pleasure, it's so hard to choose. Captain, are you having a nightmare? Looking at Tren, who was lying on the chair, laughing and twisting, Li Jing silently stepped back halfway. P.S. Excluding the summoned ones, this is the rest of the summoning list. So Shanyu comes to you again to form an adventure group. 1. Combatant. Kung Fu Panda Po. 2. Ship Craftsman. Demigod Orn, Family Guy Dumplings. 3. Living Staff. Archaeologist, Gnosis. 4. Intern, Little King Kong, Brother Corpse. Big list selection area. If you want to add new partners, you can comment here. Salted fish will be added to the big list, the key point is non-human. Then vote for it when the time comes.